Before the first cities learned to breathe, something else was already watching, etched into stone, buried beneath deserts, and sealed inside silent chambers. No living hand remembers building. Across the world, archaeologists uncover impossible alignments, tools that defy their time, and symbols that whisper of forgotten knowledge. Who placed them there? What did they know that we don't? Each discovery pulls back the veil, only to reveal deeper shadows beneath. Tonight, we step into those shadows together and confront the ancient puzzles that refuse to stay buried. Carved into the volcanic rock of Gran Canaria, the Valerón Caves stretch across the hillside like a labyrinth frozen in time. From above, the site appears almost mundane, a series of terraces and depressions etched into the earth. But as one descends, the enormity of its purpose becomes clear. This is no ordinary cave system. Here lies the legacy of a people long vanished, a civilization whose ingenuity challenges our understanding of pre-Hispanic life in the Canary Islands. At first glance, the Valerón Caves present themselves as a vast communal granary, a sophisticated network of storage pits meticulously carved into the basalt. Hundreds of cavities rise and fall in irregular patterns, each shaped to preserve grains, tubers, and seeds for generations. Archaeologists suggest that the Guanches, the island's earliest known inhabitants, constructed this extraordinary structure to sustain their communities, safeguarding their food in anticipation of harsh seasons or potential scarcity. The sheer scale of the site hints at a society capable of remarkable organization and planning. Yet as one moves through the uneven passageways, a sense of unease and wonder grows. How did these people, lacking modern tools, carve with such precision into solid rock? The edges of the pits are often smooth, the angles deliberate, suggesting methods of work that are difficult to fully reconstruct today. And while mainstream theories explain the site as a utilitarian granary, others point to patterns that hint at something more. Some cavities align with the rising sun during solstices or mark subtle geographic coordinates. Could these designs reflect an early understanding of astronomy or geography? Or are these alignments merely coincidental, the byproduct of centuries of erosion and human modification? Artifacts found nearby offer further clues, yet raise additional questions. Pottery fragments, rudimentary tools, and traces of ritualistic activity imply that Valerón was not only a storage site, but also a focal point of cultural and spiritual life. Some researchers speculate that certain pits were used in ceremonies, perhaps offerings to ensure fertile harvests or protection from misfortune. Others suggest the site functioned as a communal archive, a place where knowledge was preserved as carefully as grain. The multiplicity of interpretations only deepens the enigma. Even the cave's construction defies simple explanation. Many of the depressions are carved at varying depths and sizes, yet they share a consistent geometry that seems intentional. The labor involved would have required coordination, skill, and a clear vision, yet no records exist to describe the methods or reasoning behind such an endeavor. Did the Guanches employ tools now lost to history, or were their techniques passed down orally, now irretrievably vanished? And what of the scale itself? Does it suggest a larger population than historians have previously assumed, or perhaps a network of granaries connected across the island? Walking through Valerón today, one cannot ignore the silence that pervades the site. There are no inscriptions to decode, no written accounts to illuminate the minds of its creators. The caves speak only through their form, their arrangement, and the echoes of human hands that shaped the stone so many centuries ago. Each step prompts questions that may never be answered. Were these caverns purely practical, or did they serve a higher symbolic purpose? Did the builders understand the broader implications of their work, or were they guided by instinct, tradition, and necessity alone? As the sun shifts and shadows stretch across the rock, Valerón maintains its quiet hold over the imagination. Some mysteries appear subtle, almost imperceptible, while others strike with profound clarity, suggesting sophistication beyond what we can fully comprehend. The caves stand as a testament to human ingenuity, yet they also remind us of our limits. How much of the past remains just out of reach, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice what has been there all along. And as we leave the terraces behind, one question lingers. What secrets might the Valerón Caves still guard, quietly preserved beneath the volcanic stone? From the quiet stone terraces of the Valerón Caves, our journey now carries us across continents and centuries to the rugged heights of southern Bulgaria, where the remnants of Perperikon Fortress cling to a rocky hill like a sentinel frozen in time. Rising sharply from the Rhodope Mountains, the site commands a panoramic view of the surrounding valleys, an imposing blend of jagged cliffs, weathered stone, and ancient masonry. Even today, the fortress seems alive with echoes of past lives, a place where history and legend entwine in ways that continue to elude full understanding. Perperikon is no ordinary ruin. Archaeologists have traced human activity here back to the Neolithic era, some 6,000 years ago, yet the fortress as it stands reflects layers of Thracian, Roman, and Byzantine occupation. Terraces and walls interlock across the hillside, stairways carve paths up sheer cliffs, and platforms hint at ceremonial or defensive purposes that are difficult to interpret fully. Scholars suggest that the Thracians may have used Perperikon as a sacred site, possibly connected to the worship of Dionysus, their god of ecstasy and transformation, yet the precise nature of rituals that took place here remains shrouded in mystery. Among the fortress's most intriguing features is a massive rock altar carved directly into the bedrock. Its surface is pockmarked and smoothed in ways that suggest repeated ceremonial use over centuries. Some historians interpret this as a place for sacrificial rites or offerings, while others note the careful geometric arrangements, raising questions about astronomical alignments or symbolic coding embedded in the rock. Could the Thracians have possessed an understanding of the cosmos far beyond what their surviving records indicate? Or are these patterns simply the product of evolving cultural practices, now obscured by time? As we move through the ruins, one cannot ignore the scale and complexity of Perperikon's construction. Stairways ascend at precarious angles, chambers appear to have been carved directly from bedrock, and defensive walls seem almost impossibly integrated into the natural contours of the hill. Such engineering would have demanded extraordinary skill, meticulous planning, and an intimate knowledge of the landscape. Yet no written records survive to explain the methods or motivations behind these architectural feats. Did the Thracians leave a blueprint of knowledge, now lost? Or did the fortress evolve gradually, a cumulative effort across generations, shaped as much by necessity as by intention? Artifacts uncovered here add further layers to the enigma. Pottery, inscriptions, and remnants of dwellings hint at everyday life, while ceremonial objects suggest a rich spiritual dimension. Scholars have debated whether Perperikon was primarily a fortress, a temple, or perhaps a combination of both. Some fringe theories even speculate that it could have been the legendary location of the Oracle of Dionysus, a place where prophecy and power converged. While such claims remain unverified, the absence of definitive evidence invites contemplation rather than conclusion. Walking among the terraces and stone steps, the weight of centuries presses quietly but insistently. One can imagine the footsteps of ancient priests, the hum of ritual chants, or the careful placement of stones by hands long gone. Yet much about Perperikon remains tantalizingly out of reach. The precise purpose of its chambers, the full scope of its influence, the secrets encoded in its carvings. Each unanswered question deepens the sense of mystery, reminding us that some knowledge resists recovery even as we uncover fragments of the past. As the sun dips behind the Rhodope peaks, shadows stretch across the weathered stones, and Perperikon stands as a silent testament to human ambition, spirituality, and ingenuity. Its terraces, altars, and stairways continue to guard stories that may never be fully told, inviting us to ponder not only what was, but what might still lie hidden, waiting for discovery. And in the stillness of this ancient fortress, one is compelled to ask, how much of human history has been lost to time, and what truths remain just beyond our reach? From the rocky heights of Perperikon, our exploration now journeys across oceans and centuries to the windswept terraces overlooking the city of Cusco in Peru. Here, the fortress of Sacsayhuamán rises like a monument carved from the earth itself, a colossal puzzle of stone that has captivated historians, engineers, and travelers for generations. Perched on a hill above the valley, the fortress commands a sweeping panorama of the city below, its massive walls zigzagging across the landscape like the skeleton of a long-forgotten giant. Even today, Sacsayhuamán exudes a quiet authority, a presence that feels both deliberate and enigmatic. The scale of Sacsayhuamán is staggering. Its walls are composed of enormous stones, some weighing more than 100 tons, perfectly fitted together without mortar. The precision of these megaliths is remarkable. Each block is cut with angles so exact that even a sheet of paper cannot slip between them. Archaeologists attribute the construction to the Inca civilization of the 15th and 16th centuries, noting that such engineering reflects advanced understanding of stone cutting, seismic resistance, and urban planning. Yet the more one studies Sacsayhuamán, the more questions arise. How did the Incas transport and position stones of such immense size with the tools available at the time? And what guided the choice of their irregular shapes, forming walls that seem to defy simple geometric explanation? Beyond its architectural marvel, Sacsayhuamán holds layers of cultural and spiritual significance. Spanish chroniclers recorded that the site was used for ceremonies, military gatherings, and possibly astronomical observations. The walls themselves form terraces that align with the solstices, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of celestial patterns. Some researchers propose that Sacsayhuamán served as both a fortress and a sacred ceremonial center, bridging practical defense with ritualistic purpose. Yet as we wander its terraces today, the fortress retains an aura of the unknowable. Which parts were designed for human protection, and which were intended to honor the cosmos or the divine? The sheer craftsmanship of the stonework fuels both admiration and speculation. Some blocks appear to have been carved using techniques lost to time, their smooth surfaces and interlocking forms resisting modern replication. Legends speak of giants or mysterious ancient knowledge, yet historians caution that such stories, while colorful, cannot explain the enduring mysteries embedded in the walls themselves. Could there have been methods, perhaps passed down orally and since forgotten, that allowed the Incas to achieve what seems almost impossible by today's standards? Or were these feats the product of incremental labor, a patient effort spanning generations? As we trace the winding passages and terraces, Sacsayhuamán's design continues to challenge conventional explanation. Stairways cut into stone rise to platforms that offer commanding views of Cusco, while niches and recesses suggest hidden functions or ceremonial practices now lost to history. Some stones bear subtle carvings or markings, their significance debated. Are they symbolic, functional, or purely decorative? Each unanswered question adds another layer to the fortress's enigmatic aura, compelling us to consider the blend of ingenuity, ritual, and intuition that shaped its construction. Standing amid the colossal walls, one feels the weight of centuries pressing silently around them. The wind whistles through crevices, carrying echoes of Inca footsteps and ceremonies long past. Sacsayhuamán is more than a structure. It is a testament to human ambition, creativity, and the desire to reach beyond the ordinary. Yet even as scholars study, measure, and theorize, The fortress guards its secrets with stoic patience. How exactly did its builders achieve such perfection, and what truths about Inca knowledge and culture remain hidden in plain sight? The answers, it seems, lie somewhere between stone, sky, and the human imagination, waiting for those willing to look closer. As the windswept terraces of Sacsayhuamán fade behind us, our journey turns once again to the Mediterranean, to the rugged heart of Corsica, where the Castellu di Cucuruzzu rises from the rocky hills like a fortress born from the island itself. The name alone, Cucuruzzu, hints at the mysterious, a place whose very syllables evoke antiquity and secrecy. From afar, it appears as a cluster of jagged stones and weathered terraces, almost sculpted by natural erosion. Yet, as we approach, the deliberate hand of human craftsmanship becomes unmistakable. Each wall, each pathway, each stone seems placed with intention, forming a labyrinth that has endured millennia. Castellu di Cucuruzzu is the product of the Taurian civilization, a Bronze Age culture that flourished in Corsica around the 9th to 6th centuries BCE. Yet even with this historical anchor, the site resists simple explanation. Stone towers rise from uneven terraces, their bases rooted in the bedrock, while narrow stairways and hidden passages weave through the complex, hinting at a society both defensive and ceremonial. Archaeologists suggest the fortress may have served multiple functions: a stronghold against invaders, a center for communal gatherings, and possibly a site of ritual significance. But as with many ancient sites, every explanation opens new questions rather than closes them. The walls of Cucuruzzu, constructed from large slabs of local schist and granite, are carefully fitted with a precision that still amazes modern engineers. Stones interlock without mortar, creating a structure resilient against both time and seismic activity. How did the Taurians achieve such meticulous placement with tools so rudimentary by today's standards? Were their techniques lost to history, passed down orally and now vanished, or did the builders rely on intuition honed over generations? Even the arrangement of terraces and towers raises questions. Are they purely practical, designed to follow the contours of the hill, or might they encode symbolic or astronomical significance, hidden in plain sight? Within the fortress, narrow corridors wind between chambers, some open to the sky, others recessed into the stone as if meant to conceal or protect. Certain spaces appear deliberately restricted, perhaps reserved for specific ceremonies, sacred artifacts, or elite members of the community. The Taurians left no written records, no inscriptions to illuminate their intentions, leaving us to interpret based on architecture, artifacts, and echoes of tradition. Pottery fragments, stone tools, and traces of fire suggest a combination of domestic life and ritual activity. Yet the balance between the mundane and the sacred remains elusive. Was Cucuruzzu a home, a sanctuary, a fortress, or some combination beyond our understanding? Some researchers have noted curious alignments at Cucuruzzu. Certain terraces and openings correspond with solstices, casting long shadows at dawn and dusk that could have served calendrical or ceremonial functions. Others observe subtle patterns in the placement of stones and walls, hinting at symbolic geometry. While mainstream archaeology treats these alignments with cautious interpretation, the possibility invites the imagination. Might the Taurians have understood principles of astronomy, mathematics, or sacred design far beyond what survives in the record? Or are these coincidences, artifacts of natural topography amplified by human perception? The fortress's design also speaks to social complexity. The construction of Cucuruzzu would have required organized labor, knowledge of structural stability, and a shared vision across generations. This implies not only technical skill, but also social cohesion, a culture capable of mobilizing and coordinating large groups for long-term projects. Yet much about the Taurians themselves remains shrouded. How did they govern? What beliefs shaped their daily lives and their monumental architecture? The stones answer only in silence, leaving speculation as our primary guide. As we explore the terraces and stairways today, the atmosphere is at once serene and haunting. Moss and lichen cling to ancient walls, wind whispers through gaps, and shadows shift across the rocky courtyards. It is easy to imagine the fortress alive with people, sentinels keeping watch over the valleys, priests or elders performing rituals, children playing among the stones. Yet the centuries have erased nearly all trace of human presence, leaving only the architecture as testimony to a culture both sophisticated and enigmatic. Even the site's more enigmatic features provoke questions. Certain stones bear faint carvings, possibly symbolic motifs or markers whose meanings are lost. Other areas show signs of deliberate destruction, perhaps from conflict or ritual decommissioning. Did the Taurians abandon Cucuruzzu peacefully, or did external forces compel its desertion? Were some of its chambers deliberately concealed, intended to remain hidden for reasons we can only imagine? Standing amid the terraces and towers, the fortress exerts a quiet but undeniable gravity. Each wall, each pathway, each stone seems to whisper of intentions beyond the practical, of belief, power, and identity intertwined with landscape. The fortress endures not merely as a relic of human habitation, but as a puzzle, a record of skill, faith, and ingenuity encoded in rock. And as we leave the Castellu di Cucuruzzu behind, the mind cannot help but wander. How many secrets remain concealed within these stones, and what truths about the Taurians, their knowledge, and their world have yet to emerge from the shadows of history? Leaving the rugged terraces of Corsica behind, our journey now winds northward to the windswept moors of Cornwall, England, where the Carn Euny ancient village rests quietly beneath the green hills, shrouded in mist and memory. From a distance, the site appears almost unremarkable, low mounds and faint stone outlines blending with the landscape. Yet as we approach, the subtle sophistication of human design emerges. The remnants of circular stone huts, carefully arranged streets, and the enigmatic fogu, a subterranean stone passage, hint at a community that was far from ordinary. Carn Euny seems at once modest and monumental, ordinary and inexplicably intricate. Carn Euny was occupied by the Cornish people during the Iron Age, roughly between 500 BCE and 400 CE. Archaeological studies reveal a settlement meticulously adapted to its environment. Roundhouses constructed of stone with wattle and daub walls, each hearth carefully positioned, pathways that connect domestic and communal spaces, and terraces that follow the natural contours of the land. The village reflects both practicality and planning, yet there is an element here that defies simple explanation. How did a community of this size, without modern tools, achieve such enduring construction? And what inspired the placement of structures in a pattern that seems to echo a deeper, perhaps symbolic logic? The most compelling and mysterious feature of Carn Euny is undoubtedly the fogu, a subterranean passage dug into the earth, lined with stone and covered with slabs to create a tunnel-like chamber. Its purpose remains a matter of debate. Some scholars suggest storage, protecting food from harsh weather, while others propose ritualistic use, perhaps linked to fertility, death, or spiritual communication. The fogu's exact function continues to puzzle archaeologists. Its entrance is often narrow and constricted, its interior labyrinthine, evoking an atmosphere that feels deliberately secretive, almost sacred. Could these underground corridors have been places of ceremony, initiation, or refuge? Or are they merely practical structures whose deeper significance is now lost to time? Walking among the village's circular huts, one observes subtle clues that hint at daily life: hearths for cooking, post holes for timber supports, and traces of stone furniture. Yet there is more than practicality embedded in the stone. Some layouts suggest a careful attention to orientation, with certain entrances facing the rising sun, others aligned with seasonal or celestial markers. Was this alignment intentional, designed to harmonize with natural cycles, or coincidental, the result of pragmatic construction? The evidence hints at a community attuned not only to survival, but to the rhythms of the world around them, a society in which daily life and natural observation were inseparable. Artifacts recovered from Carn Euny, pottery fragments, tools, and personal ornaments paint a picture of a village capable of both industry and artistry. Yet these objects also raise questions about the broader culture. Why do certain items appear unique to this site? Were these trade goods, symbols of status, or ritual objects? And what stories did the villagers tell as they moved through these spaces, tending hearths, gathering crops, or navigating the fogu in silence? Each artifact, like each stone wall, serves as a fragmentary clue to a society whose inner life remains largely veiled. The fogu, in particular, seems to challenge our understanding of Iron Age technology and purpose. Its construction required considerable planning, knowledge of structural integrity, and precision in working with massive stone slabs. How did the villagers manage this without metal tools advanced enough to cut and shape stone with ease? And why construct such a complex underground system in a relatively small settlement? Some fringe theories suggest connections to druidic practices, hidden knowledge, or even ritualized secrecy, but the absence of written records leaves these interpretations open-ended. What we know is that the fogu, more than any other feature, embodies a deliberate complexity that resists reduction to simple explanation. As we wander through the village, the sense of continuity between past and present is palpable. The contours of the land, the terraces, the circle of stones, all speak to a community in dialogue with its environment. Yet despite careful excavation and study, Carn Euny maintains an air of inscrutability. Why did this settlement flourish here and not elsewhere? What customs, beliefs, or knowledge guided its builders? And most hauntingly, what has been lost to time, hidden beneath layers of soil, obscured by centuries of weather and human activity? Standing amid the low stone walls and the enigmatic fogu, one feels the quiet weight of history. Carn Euny is more than a collection of huts and tunnels. It is a living puzzle, a record of human ingenuity, adaptation, and mystery encoded in stone and earth. The villagers who lived here left no written accounts, no guidebooks to explain their choices. Yet their legacy endures, inviting us to trace their footsteps, to imagine their lives, and to contemplate the knowledge they possessed but did not, or could not, transmit. As the mist drifts across the hills and sunlight plays upon the weathered stones, Carn Euny remains both familiar and unknowable. Each terrace, each hut, each subterranean passage hints at questions we may never fully answer. And as we leave this ancient village behind, one cannot help but wonder, how much of human history, of ritual, of knowledge, lies buried in plain sight, waiting for the careful eye to uncover, and what secrets of life and belief might Carn Euny still guard beneath its stone and soil? From the misty hills of Carn Euny, where subterranean passages whisper of ancient lives, our journey now turns to the windswept Orkney Islands off the northern coast of Scotland. There, nestled among rugged terrain and exposed to the relentless North Sea winds, lies the Dwarfie Stane, an enigmatic rock-cut tomb that seems at once monumental and intimate, ancient and strangely modern. At first glance, it appears deceptively simple. A single block of red sandstone, roughly rectangular, lying low against the earth. But closer inspection reveals a hollowed interior, a passage carved directly into the stone, forming a chamber of such precision that one cannot help but marvel at the skill and intention required to create it. The Dwarfie Stane is unique among Neolithic monuments. Most tombs in the Orkneys and across Britain are constructed from assembled stones, cairns, or passage graves. This tomb, however, is carved from a single monolithic boulder, its interior carefully hollowed to create a chamber with benches along its sides, a recess at the back, and a roof of remarkable uniformity. Archaeologists date the site to roughly 3000 BCE, situating it within the same era as other Neolithic constructions in the region, yet its form and execution remain unparalleled. How did the builders carve such a solid mass of sandstone with the rudimentary tools available at the time? And what drove them to choose such a labor-intensive method when assembling stones might have been far easier? The tomb's name, Dwarfie Stane, evokes folklore as much as history. Local legend tells of dwarfs or supernatural beings inhabiting the stone, imbuing it with a mystical aura that has persisted for centuries. While modern scholarship tends to separate myth from evidence, the stories underscore the monument's enduring capacity to inspire wonder and imagination. Could there be elements of spiritual or symbolic significance encoded in the tomb's design, understood by its builders in ways that have now been lost? Was it a place of burial, ritual, or perhaps both, serving as a bridge between the living and the world beyond? Walking inside the chamber, one is struck by the precision of the carving. The walls are straight, the corners carefully defined, and the benches molded with deliberate care. The roof, unusually flat for a rock-cut tomb, spans the space with a structural integrity that speaks to practical knowledge as well as aesthetic intention. Scholars speculate that the chamber's design may reflect a desire to emulate the built forms of other tombs while asserting a unique identity. Yet the exact methods remain a mystery. Did the builders labor for months or years, chiseling the sandstone by hand, or were there techniques now lost that allowed them to shape rock with remarkable efficiency? The tomb's interior hints at both communal and ceremonial functions. The benches could have served as resting places for the deceased, or as platforms for offerings, rituals, or gatherings. The recess at the back may have held significant objects, perhaps symbolic or spiritual in nature. Yet, without written records, the meanings of these spaces are speculative. Were these structures intended primarily for burial, or were they designed to channel energies, mark sacred events, or connect with celestial patterns? Observers note that the Dwarfie Stane is oriented with the landscape in mind, though whether this reflects practical drainage, symbolic alignment, or astronomical observation remains unclear. Artifacts recovered nearby are few, yet even they deepen the mystery. Flint tools, pottery fragments, and traces of human activity suggest prolonged and repeated use, hinting at a community invested in the site over generations. Yet the tomb's isolated location and its singular design suggest an importance that transcends the everyday, a place deliberately set apart from ordinary life. What beliefs or rituals guided its creators, and why choose a single monolith rather than a constructed tomb like their contemporaries? Could this represent a unique spiritual vision, a localized tradition, or perhaps an experimental form of Neolithic architecture? The Dwarfie Stane's enduring fascination also lies in its intersection of myth and archaeology. Legends of dwarfs or otherworldly beings may have grown out of the awe inspired by the tomb itself, yet the persistence of these stories highlights the human tendency to perceive the extraordinary in the enigmatic. The tomb's scale, precision, and isolation all contribute to a sense that this was a space intended to inspire reverence, contemplation, or even fear. And yet, we can never fully know the minds or intentions of those who carved it, leaving the monument suspended between history and imagination. As one sits inside the chamber, listening to the wind whistle across the surrounding hills and waves crashing on distant shores, the silence is both profound and contemplative. The Dwarfie Stane remains a testament to human ingenuity and the desire to mark existence, to honor the dead, and perhaps to reach beyond the visible world. Each carved surface, each hollowed recess, speaks to skill, patience, and a vision that continues to defy full understanding. Even after millennia, the tomb guards its secrets. How exactly was it built? What rituals unfolded within its walls? And what beliefs, now lost, shaped the lives of those who came here to honor their dead? Standing amidst the stark beauty of the Orkney landscape, the Dwarfie Stane reminds us that some mysteries endure, not merely to confound, but to inspire the human imagination. And as we leave its shadow behind, one question lingers. What other stories, truths, or knowledge might still be hidden within the silent stones of this ancient world, waiting for those willing to seek them? From the windswept Orkney Islands, where the Dwarfie Stane rests as a silent sentinel carved from solid sandstone, our journey now turns to the fertile hills of northern Israel, where the ruins of Tel Dan rise amid the lush greenery of the Upper Galilee. Here, the remains of massive stone ramparts speak of a city that once commanded both strategic power and cultural significance. Viewed from a distance, Tel Dan's terraces and walls seem unremarkable, blending with the gentle slopes and the course of the Dan River. But as one approaches, the scale and precision of the construction become unmistakable, evoking awe and a quiet sense of mystery. The ramparts of Tel Dan are monumental. Built from large basalt stones quarried locally, these walls form multiple concentric layers, rising to heights that would have deterred even the most determined invaders. Archaeologists have dated portions of the site to the Bronze and Iron Ages, revealing a city that played a crucial role in the region's complex political and cultural history. Yet beyond their historical significance lies a puzzle. The walls' construction, their sheer size, and the precision of their placement continue to challenge modern understanding. How were these enormous stones lifted, shaped, and positioned without the mechanical technology we take for granted today? And what vision guided the builders in creating defenses so formidable, yet so elegantly integrated into the natural landscape? Tel Dan is not merely a military site. Excavations reveal layers of urban planning. Streets, gates, water channels, and domestic structures indicate a thriving community that relied on careful organization and foresight. The massive ramparts, while functional as fortifications, may also have held symbolic weight, signaling the city's wealth, power, and sacred status. Some scholars suggest that the walls were as much about projection of authority as defense, a visible declaration to allies and rivals alike. But this raises further questions. Did the builders possess knowledge of architectural principles beyond mere practicality? Or were these forms shaped primarily by trial, tradition, and local necessity? The construction techniques of Tel Dan hint at expertise in engineering and logistics. Stones weighing several tons are fitted with remarkable precision, and sections of the walls display careful alignment and leveling that suggest an advanced understanding of structural stability. Yet no inscriptions or detailed records survive to explain the methods used, leaving modern researchers to speculate. Did the city's inhabitants rely on sophisticated scaffolding, ramps, and levers? Or were their methods now lost to time? And why invest so heavily in the sheer massiveness of the walls rather than other defensive strategies known in the ancient Near East? Beyond the practical and technical questions, Tel Dan's ramparts provoke curiosity about the city's cultural and ritual significance. Nearby, the famous Tel Dan stele, an inscribed fragment mentioning the House of David, links the site to a broader historical and symbolic narrative. Could the ramparts themselves have served not only as defenses, but also as markers of lineage, authority, or religious legitimacy? And to what extent did cosmology, landscape, or ritual influence the wall's orientation and form? The answers are tantalizingly out of reach, embedded in stone and soil, waiting for those willing to probe both carefully and imaginatively. Even the patterns of wear and reuse within the walls raise questions. Some stones bear marks of reshaping, suggesting that the ramparts were repaired, rebuilt, or modified over generations. Were these changes driven by practical necessity, evolving architectural knowledge, or shifting cultural priorities? The evidence points to a living city, one that adapted over centuries, yet much of its story remains hidden in the rubble. What motivated such care and continuity in construction, and what insights about the society's values, technology, or beliefs might be embedded in these stones? Walking along the terraces and examining the layered ramparts today, one cannot help but feel a connection to the past. The walls, massive and enduring, transmit an almost tactile sense of human ambition, resilience, and ingenuity. Yet they also carry an aura of the unknown. Who precisely oversaw their construction? What rituals or ceremonies took place within or atop these walls? And what secrets about ancient political life, spiritual belief, or communal knowledge are locked within the stones themselves? As the sun shifts over the Galilean hills and shadows stretch across the basalt blocks, the ramparts of Tel Dan remain both monumental and enigmatic. They are a testament to human determination and skill, yet they challenge our assumptions about ancient engineering, urban planning, and cultural expression. Standing in their shadow, one is compelled to wonder how much of the city's knowledge, its intentions, and its human stories remain buried beneath the stones, waiting to be uncovered. And what truths about ancient civilizations, encoded in these massive walls, might still elude us, quietly preserved for millennia? From the enduring basalt walls of Tel Dan, where massive ramparts speak of ancient ambition and enduring mysteries, our journey now turns westward, to the rugged coastline and verdant hills of County Kerry, Ireland. Here, perched on windswept ridges and overlooking misty valleys, the Kerry stone forts rise from the landscape like silent sentinels of a distant past. At first glance, these ancient enclosures may appear as simple circular mounds of stone, but closer inspection reveals intricate walls, strategic placements, and enigmatic features that suggest far more than ordinary habitation. They are both fortress and enigma, each structure a puzzle of human ingenuity carved from the earth. The Kerry stone forts, or cashels as they are often called, date primarily to the Iron Age, though some may have been built or modified over many centuries. Archaeologists have identified hundreds scattered across the region, their circular walls of dry stone construction enclosing spaces that could serve as dwellings, livestock pens, or communal areas. Yet the sheer precision and resilience of these stone enclosures remain striking. Stones are fitted tightly, often without mortar, creating walls that have withstood millennia of wind, rain, and frost. How did these builders, using tools and techniques far simpler than our own, achieve such stability and durability? And what motivated the placement of these forts across the Kerry landscape with such consistency and apparent purpose? Some fort locations seem to command strategic advantage. Hilltops, ridges, and elevated promontories offering expansive views over valleys and approach routes. Scholars suggest this reflects defensive necessity, providing communities with early warning of invaders or raiders. Yet the fort's circular forms and internal organization hint at a deeper complexity. Many contain multiple enclosures, suggesting layered usage or social hierarchies within a single site. Could these circular walls reflect not only defense but also symbolic or ritual significance, perhaps tied to cosmology, clan identity, or territorial claim? And what determined the precise radius of a fort, or the spacing of stones along its wall? The answers remain tantalizingly incomplete. Artifacts recovered from these sites are sparse but telling. Pottery fragments, metal tools, and occasional decorative objects provide glimpses into daily life, while the absence of extensive remains hints at selective preservation or ritualized use. Some forts exhibit evidence of habitation, with hearths and post holes, while others seem almost empty, their stone walls forming monuments without obvious domestic function. Could these distinctions reflect differences in social status, specialized ritual spaces, or temporary refuges during conflict? And why were some forts expanded or modified over generations, while others remained largely unchanged? The construction of the Kerry stone forts also raises questions about labor and organization. Building circular walls of dry stone with such precision requires knowledge of weight distribution, stability, and alignment. Yet no contemporary records describe the techniques employed. Did communities rely on passed-down traditions, oral instruction, or methods now lost to history? And what inspired the remarkable consistency across sites scattered over the rugged Irish terrain? Was there a shared cultural or architectural knowledge guiding these constructions, or did the circular form emerge independently in multiple locations as a natural solution to structural and social needs? Beyond practicality, the forts invite speculation about social, spiritual, and symbolic dimensions. Some scholars propose that certain sites were centers of ritual or ceremonial activity, where walls demarcated sacred space and controlled the flow of people. Others suggest astronomical or seasonal alignments, with openings oriented to solstices or key celestial events. While the evidence is debated, these possibilities hint at a sophisticated awareness of landscape, time, and human movement, suggesting that the builders of Kerry stone forts were not merely concerned with defense, but with embedding meaning into their environment. As one walks along the weathered stones today, the silence is profound, broken only by wind through heather and the distant call of birds. The circular walls, often no more than a meter high, seem to hum with memory, evoking generations of human presence now vanished. Children may have played within the enclosures, fires may have burned for warmth and cooking, and ceremonies may have unfolded under moonlit skies. And yet, the stones preserve no written accounts, no explicit testimony beyond their arrangement, leaving interpretation to careful observation and informed imagination. Even the gaps and irregularities in the walls provoke thought. Some entrances are aligned in unusual directions. Others are deliberately offset or narrowed. Were these functional choices, controlling access and defending against intruders? Or were they symbolic, marking points of ritual significance, clan boundaries, or seasonal transitions? The absence of conclusive evidence allows the mind to wander across possibilities, from the practical to the ceremonial, and perhaps into realms we are only beginning to comprehend. Standing atop one of the hilltop forts, gazing across the patchwork of valleys, rivers, and distant mountains, one senses the fort's dual legacy, a practical achievement and a cultural statement, a structure at once grounded in the earth and reaching toward the human imagination. The Kerry stone forts are monuments to survival, skill, and social organization, yet they remain enigmatic, their builders' precise knowledge and intentions largely lost to time. How much of the society that raised these circular walls, guided by instinct, observation, or spiritual belief, can we truly recover today? And what hidden wisdom, rituals, or knowledge might still linger, etched into stone and landscape, awaiting rediscovery by those willing to look closely enough? From the windswept ridges of County Kerry, where ancient stone forts stand as silent witnesses to centuries of human ingenuity, our journey now carries us across oceans to the tropical archipelago of Palau in the western Pacific. Amidst dense forests and limestone hills, scattered across verdant valleys and hidden clearings, rise the enigmatic Badrulchau stone monoliths. At first glance, these megaliths appear as simple, upright slabs of weathered stone, yet as the eye adjusts to their scale and placement, a startling complexity emerges. Some stones reach several meters in height, their surfaces carved with subtle incisions and arrangements that hint at deliberate alignment. Each monolith seems to hold a story, a message frozen in time, though the language has long been lost. The Palau Badrulchau stone monoliths date back centuries, though precise chronology remains elusive. Archaeologists believe they were erected by early Micronesian societies, whose traditions emphasized communal ritual, spiritual expression, and a close relationship with the natural landscape. Unlike pyramids, stone circles, or defensive walls found elsewhere, the monoliths are singular in their arrangement and purpose. Many stand in isolated clusters, while others form linear alignments or groups suggesting ceremonial organization. Could these placements reflect social hierarchies, territorial markers, or more esoteric symbolic systems now beyond our comprehension? The monoliths themselves are remarkable in both size and construction. The stones, sourced from nearby limestone deposits, often exceed several tons. Local legends and folklore hint at the immense labor required to move and erect these megaliths across uneven terrain, a feat accomplished without wheels, draft animals, or iron tools. Some researchers suggest that sophisticated knowledge of leverage, ropes, and communal coordination would have been necessary to achieve such precision. Yet the exact methods remain a mystery. How did these early societies manipulate stones of such size? Were their tools or techniques now lost to history, or did cultural ingenuity overcome practical limitations in ways we can only imagine? Equally puzzling is the spatial arrangement of the monoliths. Some appear to align with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, or specific lunar cycles. Others form patterns that could encode symbolic or spiritual meaning, perhaps serving as markers for seasonal ceremonies, ancestral veneration, or territorial boundaries. While mainstream archaeology often emphasizes practical or ritualistic interpretations, the possibility of an advanced observational understanding embedded in stone invites contemplation. Were these alignments intentional, reflecting a sophisticated awareness of the heavens? Or do they emerge naturally from topographical convenience, their patterns interpreted after the fact by modern observers seeking meaning? Artifacts and traces of human activity near the monoliths are scarce, but suggest that these were not merely decorative stones. Pottery shards, small figurines, and evidence of fire pits point to gatherings, feasts, or rituals that may have taken place within the shadows of these towering slabs. Some stones bear subtle carvings or grooves, whose purpose has yet to be fully decoded. Are they symbolic markers, offerings to ancestors, or artistic expressions? And if they carry encoded messages, what knowledge, stories, or beliefs were they meant to transmit to those who encountered them centuries ago? The natural environment adds another layer of mystery. The monoliths are situated in landscapes that vary from dense forest to open plains, often positioned with dramatic views of nearby rivers, valleys, or hills. Did these sites serve as geographic anchors, ceremonial centers, or visual markers designed to impress visitors or community members? Or were they chosen for more esoteric reasons, aligned with spiritual or cosmological principles now lost? The interplay of stone and landscape suggests an intimate understanding of place, a dialogue between human construction and the natural world that continues to resonate across centuries. Even the social dimension of the Badrulchau monoliths is tantalizing. Erecting stones of this magnitude would have required coordination, labor management, and collective effort. This implies complex social organization, perhaps hierarchies of leadership, ritual specialists, or cooperative networks spanning multiple communities. Yet we have no written records, no inscriptions to explain their motivations. What beliefs, taboos, or traditions drove the repeated effort necessary to construct and maintain these monoliths? Did they serve as loci of power, pilgrimage, or community cohesion, binding people together across generations? Walking among the stones today, one is struck by the quiet magnitude of their presence. Sunlight filters through dense foliage, casting shadows that shift across the surfaces, accentuating the rough textures and subtle angles of the monoliths. The wind moves through the trees and grass, carrying a sense of timelessness. It is easy to imagine processions, ceremonies, or solitary contemplation unfolding among these stones, echoing practices and intentions now obscured by centuries of environmental and cultural change. And yet, the stones endure, retaining an aura of mystery, inviting interpretation without dictating it. The Badrulchau monoliths are remarkable not only for their physical presence, but for the questions they pose. Why were some stones erected in isolation while others cluster together? Did alignments correspond to practical, spiritual, or symbolic purposes? Were they connected to broader networks of megalithic practice across the Pacific, or are they a wholly unique cultural expression? And above all, what knowledge, rituals, or meanings have been lost, hidden within the arrangement of stone, the grooves carved upon their surfaces, and the subtle interplay between human creation and natural landscape? As we step back from the monoliths, the forest seems to reclaim them in soft shadows and dappled light, yet their presence remains undeniable. Each upright stone is a testament to human effort, vision, and cultural depth, while simultaneously defying full understanding. They are markers of a society whose beliefs, practices, and ingenuity continue to elude us, yet whose imprint persists in every carefully placed slab, every alignment, and every subtle carving. And as we leave Palau behind, one question lingers in the mind. What other truths, hidden knowledge, or lost rituals might these ancient monoliths still guard, waiting silently to be discovered by those who approach with patience, curiosity, and respect? From the tropical forests of Palau, where monoliths rise in silent testimony to the ingenuity and ritual of early Micronesian societies, our journey now traverses continents and millennia to the arid expanses of southern Israel. In the heart of the Timna Valley, beneath stark cliffs of red sandstone and amid the vast desert plain, lie the ruins of ancient temples, structures that stand as both architectural marvels and enigmas of the early Bronze Age. The sun beats down relentlessly on the valley floor, illuminating the jagged peaks and casting elongated shadows over stone altars, carved pillars, and mysterious ceremonial spaces that appear to have been intentionally aligned with the surrounding landscape. The Timna Valley temples, sometimes referred to as the sanctuaries of copper, are closely linked to one of humanity's earliest industries, copper mining. Archaeologists have documented extensive mining operations dating back to the 5th millennium BCE, with traces of furnaces, slag, and extracted ore attesting to large-scale metallurgical activity. Yet the temples themselves, often overlooked amid the industrial remnants, offer a more enigmatic narrative. Carved platforms, stone pillars, and altars suggest ritualistic or religious function, but their exact purpose remains unclear. Were these structures merely adjuncts to mining activity, designed to appease deities or invoke blessings on labor and production, or did they serve a deeper spiritual role within an ancient society attuned to cosmic and earthly forces? The design and placement of the temples are striking. Many align with the surrounding cliffs, the desert horizon, or the movement of the sun, creating dramatic visual and spatial effects at sunrise or sunset. Some scholars have proposed that these alignments corresponded with celestial observations, linking seasonal change, agricultural cycles, or spiritual ceremonies to the rhythms of the heavens. Yet evidence is fragmentary, and interpretations remain speculative. Could the builders of Timna have possessed knowledge of astronomy or ritual geometry that guided these monumental constructions? Or were the alignments the product of pragmatic observation, scaled over generations of iterative use? Walking among the temples, one cannot ignore the artistic dimension. Carvings of sacred animals, geometric motifs, and enigmatic symbols adorn the stone, hinting at beliefs, stories, or codes now largely lost to time. The pillars themselves, some standing solitary, others grouped in deliberate patterns, suggest careful planning and intention. Were they symbolic markers, designed to delineate sacred space, invoke divine presence, or communicate authority and hierarchy? And if so, what gods, spirits, or cosmological principles did they reflect? Figures whose names and identities have vanished from the historical record. The valley's harsh environment adds to the wonder. To construct stone temples in a desert landscape, amid soaring temperatures and limited water sources, speaks to extraordinary organization, labor management, and cultural motivation. Who directed these monumental efforts, and how did early communities mobilize the knowledge, skill, and resources necessary to shape stone and sand with such precision? Did these builders view their work as a temporal project for practical religious observance, or as a permanent bridge to the divine, meant to endure across generations as testimony to faith and ingenuity? Evidence of human activity surrounding the temples offers tantalizing clues. Remnants of pottery, ritual deposits, and traces of feasting or ceremonial gatherings suggest that these sites were centers of communal engagement, not mere isolated monuments. Yet much remains ambiguous. Some temple platforms seem deliberately restricted, accessible only to select individuals, hinting at hierarchies of ritual access or secretive ceremonial practice. Could these spaces have been reserved for priests, shamans, or leaders, while the wider community observed from a distance? And what kinds of ceremonies took place here? Sacrificial, initiatory, commemorative, or perhaps a combination of all three? The connection between metallurgy and ritual at Timna deepens the intrigue. Copper extraction was vital to early societies, and the temple's proximity to mines suggests a cultural integration of labor, economy, and spirituality. Did miners invoke the gods before entering shafts? Were smelting processes accompanied by ceremonial offerings to ensure success and safety? The evidence is circumstantial but compelling, pointing to a worldview in which the physical and spiritual realms were inseparably intertwined, where stone altars and furnaces existed within the same sacred geography. Yet beyond practical explanations, the Timna Valley temples invite contemplation of mystery. Why were certain temples isolated on rocky promontories, while others cluster near mining operations? Do the arrangements of pillars and platforms encode knowledge or narratives that have been lost, like a language etched in stone without a key? And perhaps most profoundly, what drove early humans to invest so much effort, imagination, and ingenuity in places that now seem remote, desolate, and indifferent to human endeavor? The answers remain elusive, hidden within stone, sand, and shadow. As one walks across the sun-scorched valley, feeling the texture of carved stone and hearing the whisper of wind through jagged cliffs, the temples exert a quiet power. They are at once evidence of human skill, belief, and social organization, and monuments to what remains unknown. Their endurance across millennia provokes both awe and reflection. How did early societies conceive of divinity, ritual, and cosmic order, and what truths about human ingenuity have been preserved in the silent, weathered stone of these temples? Even as modern researchers examine foundations, altars, and pillar arrangements, the mysteries endure. The temples retain an aura of the ineffable, a place where labor, belief, and observation converge, yet where meaning remains partially obscured. Standing amid these ancient sanctuaries, one is left to contemplate the interplay of human endeavor, spiritual aspiration, and environmental constraint. How much knowledge, insight, or ritual practice has been irretrievably lost to time? And what might still be waiting, silently, among the pillars, altars, and desert shadows of the Timna Valley, ready to reveal fragments of an ancient worldview to those willing to look closely, patiently, and with reverence? From the sun-scorched sanctuaries of the Timna Valley, where stone temples testify to ritual, labor, and ancient belief, our journey now turns north across seas and centuries to the wind-swept Baltic island of Gotland, Sweden. Amid rolling plains and sparse forests, the megalithic grave mound rises from the earth, a subtle yet imposing feature on the landscape. At first glance, it might seem no more than a gentle rise, a mound blending with the surrounding terrain. Yet, as one approaches, the scale, form, and deliberate construction become clear. Large stones form the core of the mound, meticulously arranged, their surfaces weathered but enduring, each holding silent witness to centuries of human endeavor. The megalithic grave mounds of Gotland date primarily to the Nordic Bronze Age, around 1700 to 500 BCE, though some may have roots extending even further back into prehistory. These monuments are burial sites, but they are far more than mere receptacles for the dead. Each mound embodies the labor, belief systems, and social structures of the communities that constructed it. Massive stones, often weighing several tons, are carefully stacked or laid in circular, rectangular, or trapezoidal arrangements, creating chambers or delineating boundaries that have survived millennia of wind, rain, and frost. How did early societies manipulate such immense stones with the simple tools available to them? And why devote so much labor and ingenuity to the burial of a select few? The construction of these mounds required remarkable knowledge and coordination. Stones are not haphazardly placed. Their orientation, alignment, and positioning suggest both functional and symbolic intent. Some graves contain multiple chambers, indicating repeated use over generations. Others are singular, perhaps reserved for a prominent individual or clan leader. Were these arrangements purely practical, designed to protect the remains and mark sacred territory, or did they also encode a cosmological or spiritual logic? Might the placement of stones, their size, and the shape of the mound have been intended to mirror the cycles of the sun, the stars, or the changing seasons? Walking across the site, one notices subtleties that hint at ritualistic purpose. Certain stones are deliberately smoothed, others bear grooves or shallow carvings whose meaning remains obscure. Some mounds are oriented along axes that correspond to solstices or significant celestial events. Scholars debate the extent of these alignments. Are they evidence of advanced astronomical knowledge, or the product of careful observation and intuition over generations? The answer may lie somewhere between practicality and sacred insight, a reflection of a society whose daily lives were inseparable from both the cycles of nature and the rituals of death. Artifacts discovered within and around the mounds provide further insight, though they also deepen the mystery. Bronze tools, jewelry, pottery fragments, and occasionally human remains reveal glimpses of social hierarchy, technological ability, and ritual practice. Yet the scarcity of items in some mounds raises questions. Were certain graves reserved for select individuals whose significance transcended wealth or status, chosen instead for lineage, spiritual role, or extraordinary ability? And what beliefs guided the selection, preparation, and burial of the deceased in these monumental constructions? The environmental context adds another layer of fascination. Gotland's windswept plains and isolated forests would have presented both opportunity and challenge for mound construction. Transporting massive stones across uneven ground, coordinating labor, and maintaining the structural integrity of the mounds would have demanded extensive knowledge, communal effort, and cultural motivation. Who oversaw these projects? How were tasks distributed among the community? And what drove people to invest so much time, energy, and resources into monuments that were, in essence, dedicated to preserving memory and honoring the dead? Beyond practical and ritual considerations, the megalithic grave mounds carry an aura of the enigmatic. Certain features defy easy explanation. Some stones are deliberately oversized, others are arranged in patterns that resist functional interpretation. Were these intentional acts of symbolism meant to communicate power, connection to ancestors, or spiritual significance? Could some mounds have served as territorial markers, while others were ceremonial centers for rites that remain invisible to us today? And what knowledge, once understood by the builders, has now been lost to the millennia? The mound's endurance speaks to human ambition and ingenuity, but also to the persistence of mystery. Standing among the weathered stones, one senses a continuity between past and present. The hand that shaped the stone, the eyes that gazed upon the surrounding landscape, and the lives that intersected with this sacred site are all present in memory and space. Yet, much remains hidden. How many chambers have yet to be uncovered? What rituals occurred that leave no trace in the archaeological record? And what cultural, spiritual, or cosmological insights might have been encoded in these stones, waiting to be deciphered? Even today, the megalithic grave mounds evoke awe and quiet contemplation. They are tangible evidence of human skill and devotion, yet they resist complete understanding. Each stone, each arrangement, each carefully constructed chamber stands as a question posed across millennia, a challenge to modern observers to reconcile technical achievement with spiritual intention, and to imagine the beliefs and practices that shaped these enduring monuments. As the sun dips toward the Baltic horizon, casting long shadows across the weathered stones, the mounds maintain a silent presence. They remind us that human history is not only a record of what we can see, but also a landscape of what remains hidden, lost, or intentionally concealed. What wisdom, beliefs, or knowledge has vanished with time, yet remains encoded in these stones, waiting to be glimpsed by those who walk carefully among them, attuned to both the visible and the invisible. The megalithic grave mounds of Gotland endure not only as graves for the departed, but as monuments to the unknown, inviting reflection, curiosity, and wonder in all who encounter them. From the windswept plains of Gotland, where megalithic grave mounds preserve the memory of ancient lives in stone, our journey now carries us southward across the Mediterranean to the island of Sardinia, Italy. Here, in the fertile plains near Sassari, rises Monte Baranta, a monument so unique in design and scale that it defies simple classification. At first glance, it resembles a stepped platform or truncated pyramid, constructed from massive stone blocks arranged in terraces that climb toward the sky. Yet as one approaches, the subtle sophistication of the structure becomes apparent. An enormous ramp ascends one side, leading to a flat summit that may have served as a ceremonial platform, altar, or observatory. The structure's presence is both imposing and enigmatic, a silent testament to the creativity and ambition of its builders. Monte Baranta is widely dated to the late Neolithic period, around 4000 to 3500 BCE, making it one of the oldest monumental constructions in Western Europe. Unlike contemporary European megalithic tombs or stone circles, Monte Baranta is a singular architectural form, combining elements of a platform, altar, and stepped mound. Its function remains a subject of debate. Archaeologists suggest it may have served as a religious sanctuary, a communal gathering place, or a ceremonial site linked to the cycles of the sun and the agricultural calendar. Yet the absence of inscriptions or definitive ritual artifacts leaves its precise purpose shrouded in mystery. How did these early Sardinian societies conceive, design, and execute such a structure? And what motivated them to elevate stone above the surrounding landscape in this deliberate, monumental form? The construction of Monte Baranta demonstrates remarkable technical skill. Large limestone blocks, quarried locally, were cut and positioned with precision, forming terraces that rise in a series of steps. The ramp, carefully aligned to the base of the mound, leads directly to the summit, suggesting intentional movement and access for human activity. The builder's understanding of weight distribution, stability, and structural cohesion is evident in the enduring nature of the monument, which has survived thousands of years of weathering and seismic activity. What methods did they employ to move and lift stones of such size? Did they rely solely on manual labor, ropes, and wooden levers, or were their techniques and knowledge now lost to time? The spatial and symbolic arrangement of Monte Baranta adds to its intrigue. The mound is oriented in a manner that some scholars believe may correspond with astronomical events, such as solstices or equinoxes. Could the summit have served as a platform for observing celestial movements, marking seasonal transitions critical to agricultural cycles? Or might the orientation have held religious or symbolic significance, connecting the earthly realm with the divine or supernatural forces revered by the Neolithic community? While these theories remain speculative, the careful design suggests a sophisticated awareness of both the natural world and human ritual practice. Excavations at the site have uncovered remnants of altars, hearths, and other traces of human activity, indicating repeated ceremonial use. Pottery fragments, obsidian tools, and occasional offerings suggest that the site was not merely a passive marker of territory, but an active focal point for community ritual and spiritual life. Yet questions remain. Were these ceremonies tied to fertility, ancestor veneration, or celestial observation? Did they involve the entire community, or were they restricted to a priestly class or ruling elite? And what oral traditions, myths, or cosmologies guided the design and use of such a monumental structure, now silent across millennia? The relationship between Monte Baranta and the surrounding landscape also speaks to its significance. Positioned amid rolling plains and visible from considerable distances, the monument dominates the horizon, creating a visual anchor in the environment. Some researchers suggest this placement was deliberate, intended to impress or unify local communities, or to mark a sacred boundary. Others propose that its location had practical or symbolic functions, perhaps linked to water sources, fertility of the land, or routes of communication. Regardless, the interplay of stone and landscape reflects a deep understanding of place, demonstrating that the builders were attuned to both the practical and spiritual dimensions of their environment. Monte Baranta also invites reflection on the social organization required to create such a monument. Moving massive stone blocks, designing terraces and ramps, and coordinating communal labor implies sophisticated leadership, planning, and cooperation. How were tasks assigned? What knowledge or rituals guided construction, and how was expertise transmitted across generations? The monument stands as a testament not only to technical ability, but to social cohesion, suggesting that early Sardinian societies possessed both organizational skill and cultural motivation, sufficient to transform landscape into lasting ritual architecture. Yet beyond construction and technical achievement lies the deeper mystery of meaning. The flat summit, terraces, and ramp hint at ritual processions, gatherings, or ceremonies, but the absence of direct evidence leaves the interpretation open. Did the monument serve as a bridge between the human and spiritual worlds? Was it designed to host rites of passage, offerings to deities, or festivals tied to the cycles of nature? And how much of the symbolic language encoded in stone has been lost, obscured by time, weather, and the impermanence of perishable materials once associated with the site? Even today, approaching Monte Baranta, one feels a sense of continuity between the builders and the present observer. The monument is at once monumental and intimate, monumental in scale and ambition, intimate in its subtle details, the careful positioning of stones, and the deliberate ascent of the ramp that invites human interaction. Its survival across thousands of years transforms it into a living puzzle, a structure that challenges our assumptions about the Neolithic world and the capacities of its people. Each terrace, each stone, each faint trace of human activity offers a question rather than an answer, urging reflection, imagination, and curiosity. As the Sardinian sun casts long shadows over the terraces, and the surrounding plains are painted in the warm glow of evening, Monte Baranta stands as a silent witness to human ingenuity, belief, and aspiration. It reminds us that monumental construction was not merely about utility or survival, but about identity, spirituality, and the human desire to connect with forces beyond the immediate world. And as we step back, leaving the stone terraces behind, one is left to ponder. What secrets, rituals, or knowledge might still be encoded in this ancient platform? What inspired the builders to raise stone toward the sky, to carve terraces with such care, and to construct a monument that speaks across millennia to every visitor who comes seeking understanding? Monte Baranta remains both a testament to achievement and a question suspended in time, inviting contemplation, imagination, and a recognition of the enduring mysteries of human history. From the stepped terraces of Monte Baranta in Sardinia, where Neolithic ingenuity and ritual ambition left their enduring imprint on stone, our journey now follows the course of history eastward to the sun-soaked hills of southwestern Turkey. Here, amid the fertile valley of the Menderes River and overlooking the winding course of its tributaries, lie the ruins of Tralleis, a sacred complex whose origins stretch deep into the ancient world. At first sight, the site appears as a scatter of weathered stone foundations, colonnaded terraces, and fragmentary walls. But as the eye adjusts, the subtle magnificence of the complex emerges. Massive stone blocks, carved reliefs, and carefully aligned altars hint at an architectural vision that was both ceremonial and cosmological, designed to endure the passage of centuries. The Tralleis sacred complex was an important spiritual and civic center in antiquity, linked to Hellenistic traditions yet built upon layers of earlier habitation. Archaeological evidence suggests that the site functioned as a nexus for ritual activity, commerce, and social gathering, where the natural and constructed worlds were harmonized through careful design. Colonnades and stepped terraces suggest a deliberate orchestration of movement and visibility, guiding visitors along ceremonial paths while framing views of the surrounding hills and river valleys. Was this alignment purely practical, or was it intended to convey spiritual significance, to mirror cosmic order, or to link human ritual with celestial events? The architecture of Tralleis is remarkable in its combination of precision, scale, and adaptability to the terrain. Builders carved terraces into the slopes of the hills, creating flat ceremonial platforms while simultaneously stabilizing the hillside. Massive blocks of local stone were shaped and placed with care, forming both structural and symbolic elements. Some stones bear traces of carved reliefs, abstract motifs, and symbolic patterns whose meaning remains obscure. Were these purely decorative, or did they encode ritual knowledge or cosmological beliefs? And if so, how much of that knowledge has been lost, leaving only the stone itself as silent testimony? As one moves through the remains of the complex, the organization of spaces becomes increasingly compelling. Certain terraces appear to have served as open-air gathering areas, others as shrines or ritual focal points. Archaeologists have identified altars, stone basins, and carved platforms that suggest sacrificial, commemorative, or ceremonial functions. Yet the scarcity of textual records from the earliest periods means that much is left to interpretation. What kinds of rites were performed here? Were they seasonal ceremonies tied to agriculture, rites of passage, or spiritual observances aligned with the cycles of the heavens? And how did the physical design of the complex reinforce or guide these sacred activities? The placement of the complex itself adds to the mystery. Situated at a natural crossroads of river valleys, the site would have been both visually prominent and geographically accessible. Was this location chosen for practical reasons, trade routes, proximity to water, defensibility, or for symbolic reasons, linking the human settlement to natural features imbued with spiritual significance? Some scholars propose that the terraces and altars may have been deliberately oriented to capture sunrise and sunset light during solstices, or to align with prominent stars and constellations. Could the Tralleis sacred complex have functioned as an observatory, a calendar, or a locus of cosmological understanding, integrating astronomy with ritual practice? Artifacts recovered from the site offer tantalizing clues, but also raise further questions. Fragments of pottery, votive offerings, and small figurines suggest ritual use, yet the patterns are inconsistent and difficult to interpret. Some altars appear deliberately sparse, while others indicate repeated ceremonial deposition. Were certain areas reserved for elite or priestly classes, while others accommodated communal participation? And how did these material traces reflect belief systems, social hierarchies, or long-standing traditions that guided behavior and shaped the landscape? The construction techniques of Tralleis reveal a high degree of technical knowledge. Stones are carefully cut, terraces precisely leveled, and retaining walls expertly integrated into the natural hillside. The builders displayed an understanding of balance, weight distribution, and long-term durability, ensuring that the complex would withstand earthquakes, erosion, and centuries of human activity. Yet despite the engineering skill, the site retains a sense of mystery. How were these stones quarried, transported, and placed with such precision? And what tools, methods, or lost techniques enabled early architects to translate symbolic and ritual concepts into enduring stone structures? Beyond the physical structure, the Tralleis sacred complex resonates with cultural and spiritual significance. The design appears intentionally immersive. Movement along terraces and stairways may have mirrored the spiritual journey of participants, guiding them from the ordinary world to sacred spaces. Architectural elements create controlled vistas and lines of sight, framing distant hills, river bends, or sacred natural features. Could this have been a form of ritual theater, where the environment itself played a role in guiding perception and emotion? And if so, what philosophical, spiritual, or cosmological beliefs underpinned this intentional choreography of stone, light, and landscape? Even the patterns of erosion and modification at the site provoke reflection. Some terraces appear to have been reshaped or rebuilt, suggesting long-term use and adaptation. Were these changes functional, responding to environmental pressures, or symbolic, reflecting evolving rituals and beliefs? The layers of stone and soil preserve evidence not only of construction, but of centuries of human presence, devotion, and interpretation. And yet, much remains inaccessible. The original ceremonial practices, the chants, the offerings, and the human experiences that animated the complex have vanished into history, leaving the stones themselves as the primary narrative. Walking through Tralleis today, one senses the continuity between past and present. The sun slants across terraces and colonnades, highlighting the textures of weathered stone and casting long, shifting shadows. The wind carries a whisper of centuries past, of rituals performed, prayers offered, and human beings moving deliberately through spaces designed to inspire awe and reflection. In this silence, the monument communicates as much by what it conceals as by what is visible. It challenges the observer to imagine, to infer, and to wonder at the cultural and spiritual worlds that shaped its creation. The Tralleis sacred complex is at once tangible and enigmatic. Its terraces, altars, and colonnades demonstrate technical skill, organizational capacity, and aesthetic vision. Yet the deeper purpose, the spiritual, cosmological, and social meaning, remains elusive. What rituals, knowledge, or celestial observations guided the builders? How did the interplay of stone, landscape, and sky shape human perception and belief? And what remains hidden beneath layers of soil, weathered stone, and centuries of cultural change? As the sun begins to descend over the Menderes Valley, bathing the terraces in golden light, the sacred complex retains its quiet power. It reminds us that human history is composed not only of what can be recorded or explained, but of mysteries that endure, waiting for careful observation, reflection, and interpretation. The Tralleis sacred complex challenges us to consider the ambitions, beliefs, and ingenuity of its builders, and to confront the unknown dimensions of ancient ritual, architecture, and cosmology. Standing amidst these stone terraces, one cannot help but ask, what truths, wisdom, or spiritual insights are encoded in the very stones of Tralleis preserved across millennia, waiting for those patient and attentive enough to perceive them? From the sacred terraces of Tralleis, where stone platforms and ceremonial ramps once guided human ritual under the Mediterranean sun, our journey now crosses the Aegean and continental Europe to the rolling hills and rugged landscapes of northern England. Perched atop the craggy escarpments of Hadrian's Wall, the fortress of Housesteads stands as a sentinel over the Northumbrian frontier, a testament to Roman ambition and the enigmatic human stories preserved within its stone walls. Even in ruins, the fortress commands the imagination. Sturdy stone ramparts rise from the uneven terrain, enclosing a compact settlement of barracks, granaries, and administrative buildings. The wind whistles across the escarpment, carrying the sense of isolation, vigilance, and centuries of human history. Housesteads, known in antiquity as Vercovicium, is one of the best preserved Roman forts along Hadrian's Wall, a monumental boundary built in the 2nd century CE under the reign of Emperor Hadrian. Its primary purpose was military, a garrison designed to control the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, monitor movement across the border, and project imperial authority into a landscape populated by diverse local communities. Yet despite the clarity of its military function, Housesteads retains an air of mystery, a sense that beneath the practical stonework and organized layouts lie untold stories of daily life, belief, and human experience at the edge of empire. The fortress's design reflects Roman ingenuity and discipline. Thick stone walls form rectangular perimeters, punctuated by guard towers at strategic intervals, while internal streets and buildings are laid out with precise regularity. Barracks accommodated hundreds of soldiers, while granaries and workshops supported the logistical needs of a remote garrison. Some structures exhibit evidence of adaptations over time, suggesting that the fort evolved in response to shifting military, political, and environmental pressures. But while the overall plan is well understood, many details remain puzzling. How did Roman engineers manage construction in such a remote and rugged location? What engineering knowledge ensured the longevity of walls, gates, and towers in a landscape frequently battered by wind, rain, and frost? The human dimension of Housesteads is equally compelling. Archaeologists have uncovered artifacts that illuminate daily life: pottery fragments, tools, coins, and remnants of personal adornment. These discoveries suggest that soldiers and civilians alike inhabited a structured, highly regulated environment, yet one that also allowed for private expression, leisure, and cultural exchange. Graffiti etched into walls, for instance, preserves fleeting glimpses of personal identity. Names, symbols, even crude illustrations, left by soldiers long gone. What did these inscriptions mean to the individuals who carved them? Were they acts of devotion, boredom, humor, or defiance? And how did life at the northern edge of empire shape their worldview, their fears, and their beliefs? The fortress also hints at ritual and spiritual practices. Altars, dedicatory inscriptions, and religious symbols found on site indicate that soldiers engaged with a range of deities, from Roman gods to localized or syncretic forms of worship. Was religion a personal comfort in a harsh frontier, a collective expression of communal identity, or a strategic instrument for maintaining discipline and cohesion? Some altars suggest appeals for protection, victory, or safe passage, while others may reflect ritualized acts designed to honor ancestral traditions or maintain favor with supernatural forces. And yet, the interplay between personal belief and imperial ideology remains only partially visible. a puzzle that the stones themselves silently preserve. Beyond its human occupants, the fortress's location amplifies its sense of mystery. Housesteads occupies a commanding position on a ridge overlooking the surrounding valleys and hills. The walls, towers, and gates are oriented to maximize visibility and control, but they also create dramatic vistas, framing the landscape in ways that seem both functional and symbolic. Could the placement of structures have been intended to convey power to distant observers, to assert control over the environment, or even to inspire awe and psychological influence over those approaching the wall? And how did the natural environment, the harsh winds, steep inclines, and shifting weather, interact with the built landscape to shape daily life, defense strategies, and ritual practice? The fortress's survival over nearly 2 millennia is remarkable. Weathering, neglect, and centuries of agricultural use might have reduced many similar sites to rubble, yet Housesteads endures. Stone walls rise in carefully preserved fragments, gateways hint at thresholds once crossed by hundreds of soldiers, and interior floors bear the faint marks of human activity long vanished. How much knowledge about construction, strategy, and daily practice has been irrevocably lost? What subtleties of Roman frontier life, soldierly culture, and ritual behavior remain invisible, encoded only in the arrangement of stones and faint impressions in the soil? Even as we attempt to reconstruct life at Housesteads, unanswered questions proliferate. Some areas of the fort suggest long-term habitation, while others appear to have been used temporarily or modified in response to crises. What decisions guided the construction, adaptation, and abandonment of specific structures? How did soldiers, officers, and civilians negotiate hierarchy, survival, and identity in such a challenging environment? And what stories, conflicts, and experiences were never recorded, leaving only material traces to hint at lives fully lived but partially lost? The fortress also invites contemplation of human resilience and ingenuity. To establish a permanent military and administrative presence on the northern edge of the Roman Empire required not only engineering skill but social cohesion, logistical planning, and cultural adaptation. Roads, water supply systems, and defensive structures demonstrate careful planning and technological understanding. Yet even with these innovations, the frontier was unpredictable, and the human dimension, the interactions between soldiers, local populations, and the forces of nature, remains difficult to reconstruct fully. How did these individuals cope with isolation, uncertainty, and the ever-present potential for conflict? Walking among the ruins today, one feels the echo of centuries. The wind moves across the escarpment, carrying a sense of isolation and vigilance. The walls, towers, and gateways create an atmosphere of containment and observation, while the subtle interplay of light and shadow transforms mundane stonework into an evocative landscape of memory. The fortress communicates as much through what it conceals, the lives, rituals, and experiences lost to time, as through what is visible. It is both monument and enigma, a structure of human ambition that challenges the modern observer to imagine life, purpose, and meaning at the edge of empire. The fortress of Housesteads, though well studied, retains an aura of mystery. Its walls speak of discipline, power, and strategic intent, yet they also conceal the intimate human stories that gave the site life: fears, hopes, prayers, and daily routines. Was Housesteads purely a military outpost, or did it function as a cultural, spiritual, and social hub for those living on the edge of the known world? How did the interactions between landscape, architecture, and human activity shape perception, belief, and social cohesion? And what truths about frontier life, resilience, and the human capacity to impose order on both nature and society remain hidden, etched into stone, soil, and shadow? As the sun dips behind the distant hills of Northumberland, casting long shadows across the fortress, the silence of centuries settles over the site. Housesteads endures as both artifact and enigma, a monument to engineering and strategy, a record of human endeavor, and a reminder of the mysteries that remain embedded in every wall, doorway, and terrace. Standing among these ancient stones, one cannot help but wonder, what stories, knowledge, or experiences have vanished forever, and what whispers of the past still linger here, waiting for those patient enough to observe, imagine, and reflect. The fortress of Housesteads stands not only as a relic of empire, but as a portal into the unknown dimensions of human history at the very edge of civilization. From the northern ramparts of Housesteads, where Roman soldiers once surveyed the frontier and the wind whispered through stone walls, our journey now moves westward across the Irish Sea to the rugged and windswept cliffs of the Aran Islands. Perched on a sheer precipice overlooking the relentless Atlantic, Dún Aonghasa Fort rises from the limestone plateau of Inishmore, its walls curving around the edge of a dramatic drop that plummets hundreds of feet to the sea below. From a distance, the site seems almost impossibly positioned, a fortress clinging to the edge of the world, its stone walls blending seamlessly with the natural contours of the land. The sight alone evokes a mixture of awe and apprehension, a sense that human determination and ingenuity have been brought to their most extreme expression. Dún Aonghasa, one of the most iconic prehistoric forts of Ireland, dates primarily to the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, around 1100 to 500 BCE. Yet its origins may reach even further back, layered upon earlier settlements and ritual sites. The fort is classified as a promontory fort, exploiting natural cliff edges for defense, but the construction is far from simple. Multiple concentric stone walls, terraced pathways, and defensive ditches were engineered with remarkable precision to maximize protection, control movement, and dominate the surrounding landscape. The builders sculpted the limestone bedrock and shaped massive stone blocks with care, aligning walls and gateways to complement both natural topography and defensive needs. How did Bronze Age communities achieve such feats of construction on precipitous terrain with rudimentary tools? What knowledge of engineering, landscape, and human movement guided the creation of these stone fortifications? The human element of Dún Aonghasa is central to its enduring mystery. Archaeological evidence suggests that the fort was more than a defensive stronghold. It functioned as a center for social, ceremonial, and possibly spiritual life. Within its walls, remnants of roundhouses, hearths, and storage structures hint at habitation and daily activity, while the fort's dramatic placement suggests a psychological as well as practical purpose, to inspire fear, respect, or awe in approaching communities or potential invaders. Could the fort's location on a cliff edge have been symbolic as well as strategic, a deliberate statement of dominance and connection to the natural and spiritual world? The design of the fort reflects a nuanced understanding of defense, visibility, and human behavior. Concentric walls create layered obstacles for any would-be assailant, while gateways and terraced paths control the flow of movement into and out of the enclosure. Yet the layout also emphasizes ceremony. The approach to the highest terrace involves a deliberate ascent, climbing through successive stone rings, each one imposing in scale and presence. Could this architectural choreography have been intended to elevate participants physically and symbolically, preparing them for ritual, observation, or assembly at the summit? And if so, what beliefs or cosmologies guided this integration of defensive and ceremonial architecture? The surrounding environment amplifies the fort's mystique. From the summit, the Atlantic stretches to the horizon, and the sound of waves crashing against cliffs carries across the plateau. The visibility of Dún Aonghasa from land and sea would have made it a powerful symbol, a marker of presence and authority, yet it also exposed the site to the harshest elements. Builders had to contend not only with steep cliffs and rugged terrain, but also with relentless wind, rain, and salt spray. How did ancient communities adapt to and harness these environmental challenges, shaping stone to endure in one of the most exposed and inhospitable landscapes of prehistoric Europe? Artifacts and traces of human activity within the fort suggest complexity in social structure and ritual practice. While many items are utilitarian, tools, pottery, and remnants of food, some suggest symbolic or ceremonial use. Certain alignments of walls, platforms, and enclosures may have been designed to mark seasonal events or astronomical phenomena, while the concentric walls themselves create a spatial hierarchy that may reflect social organization. Were these spaces reserved for elite members of the community, ritual specialists, or leaders? And how did the daily routines of ordinary inhabitants interact with the ceremonial or defensive aspects of the fort? The scale and precision of construction at Dún Aonghasa invite speculation about labor, knowledge, and cultural motivation. Moving massive limestone blocks, shaping terraces, and creating concentric walls would have required coordinated effort, expertise, and sustained commitment. Who directed these monumental efforts, and how were skills and knowledge transmitted across generations? Was the fort the product of a single generation, or the cumulative effort of centuries of maintenance, expansion, and ritual adaptation? And how did the interplay of social organization, spiritual belief, and environmental necessity drive such extraordinary human endeavor? Even with centuries of study, Dún Aonghasa retains profound mysteries. Some terraces and walls appear deliberately oversized, while certain pathways and enclosures defy easy explanation. Were these functional, ceremonial, or symbolic? Could certain alignments correspond to celestial events, the solstice sun, lunar cycles, or particular stars? Or were they the product of practical adaptation to the cliffs themselves? The lack of written records leaves these questions open, and every excavation, every new discovery, only deepens the intrigue. Walking along the edge of the cliffs, tracing the ancient stone pathways, one is struck by the intimacy and immediacy of human presence across millennia. The walls seem to speak of determination, ingenuity, and a worldview that integrated defense, ritual, and landscape. Yet they also conceal vast unknowns. The thoughts, beliefs, and experiences of those who built, inhabited, and defended the fort remain largely inaccessible, leaving us to infer, imagine, and wonder. What fears, ambitions, or spiritual practices motivated the builders? How did they understand their relationship to the land, the sea, and the heavens? And what knowledge, once central to their society, has been lost to time? The fort's endurance, precariously poised on cliff edges that have survived millennia of storms and erosion, speaks to human resilience and skill, but also to the enduring power of mystery. Each stone, terrace, and defensive wall preserves questions about social structure, ritual practice, and environmental adaptation. How did prehistoric communities integrate daily life with ceremonial observance? To what extent was the fort a projection of political or spiritual authority, and how much was it a practical response to the demands of survival in a harsh, exposed environment? Even today, the Atlantic wind sweeping across the plateau carries a sense of time suspended. The fort is at once isolated and commanding, a place where one can feel the weight of human effort, the vigilance of centuries past, and the unknown dimensions of Bronze Age life. The concentric walls, terraces, and cliff-edge positions invite contemplation of both practical and symbolic meaning, encouraging modern observers to consider the interplay of human ingenuity, environmental adaptation, and spiritual aspiration. Dún Aonghasa Fort remains a site of awe, reflection, and unanswered questions. Its walls and terraces embody the technical mastery, social organization, and cultural imagination of its builders. Yet they also preserve what is most elusive: the intimate, subjective experiences of the people who shaped, defended, and inhabited the site. What ceremonies, knowledge, or beliefs were enacted here that left no tangible trace? What inspired communities to transform perilous cliffs into monumental architecture? And what secrets of human resilience, ingenuity, and worldview are still encoded in stone, waiting for patient observers to interpret their silent message? Standing on the edge of the cliffs, one senses both the triumph of human achievement and the persistence of mystery, a reminder that the past is never fully knowable, but always compelling, if only we are willing to look closely, thoughtfully, and with imagination. Construction at Monte Baranta required significant technical skill and coordination. Massive stones, quarried locally, were transported, shaped, and placed without mortar, relying on careful alignment and weight distribution to ensure stability. Terraces were carved into the hillside, sometimes supported by retaining walls that themselves demonstrate advanced understanding of load, balance, and soil stabilization. How did these communities organize labor, plan construction, and transmit architectural knowledge across generations? Were there master builders or spiritual leaders guiding the process, ensuring that both practical and symbolic dimensions were respected? The patterns of habitation and modification at Monte Baranta also hint at temporal depth. Archaeological layers suggest periods of expansion, consolidation, and reorganization, indicating that the site was in use for centuries and adapted to changing social, political, or environmental circumstances. Were these adaptations responses to external threats, internal social dynamics, or evolving ritual practices? And what stories of conflict, negotiation, or ceremony are embedded in the stone terraces and walls, waiting to be interpreted? Even today, standing atop Monte Baranta, one can feel the interplay of human ambition and natural forces. The wind sweeps across the plateau, carrying the scent of earth and sea, while the rugged landscape stretches in all directions, reminding visitors of both the isolation and strategic advantage of the site. The terraces, walls, and foundations speak of labor, planning, and imagination, yet they also conceal the intangible, the social hierarchies, spiritual beliefs, and daily routines that gave life to the settlement. What did the inhabitants of Monte Baranta see, believe, and fear? What ceremonies, knowledge, or symbolic practices remain hidden in the arrangement of stones, terraces, and vantage points? The enduring presence of Monte Baranta is both a testament to human ingenuity and an invitation to ponder the mysteries of the past. Its walls preserve centuries of construction, modification, and habitation, while the landscape around it continues to evoke the drama of human survival, ritual, and aspiration. Each terrace and defensive wall poses questions. What motivated the placement of each stone, the shaping of each pathway, and the design of each enclosure? How did the builders integrate practical needs with spiritual and symbolic meaning, and how much of that knowledge has been lost to time? Walking among the terraces, tracing the outlines of walls and structures, one senses the rhythm of life that once pulsed across Monte Baranta. The labor of stonework, the preparation of food, the observance of ritual, the strategies of defense, and the interactions of community. Yet for all the evidence of human activity, much remains inaccessible. What inspired these people to carve, shape, and organize stone on such a formidable summit? How did they perceive the connection between their settlement and the surrounding landscape, between the earthly and the spiritual? And what secrets, practices, or knowledge lie buried beneath layers of earth, stone, and centuries of weathering, awaiting discovery by those patient enough to listen to the whispers of history? Monte Baranta endures as a site of both comprehension and mystery, a place where human skill, spiritual imagination, and environmental awareness converge in stone. Its terraces and walls offer glimpses into prehistoric Sardinian life, yet they also challenge observers to grapple with the unknowable. The rituals performed, the beliefs held, the social dynamics navigated, and the knowledge transmitted across generations. As the sun dips over the surrounding hills, casting long shadows across the terraces, the mountain stands as a sentinel of memory, labor, and imagination, a monument to human creativity and endurance that continues to evoke curiosity, reflection, and wonder. Construction at Monte Baranta required significant technical skill and coordination. Massive stones, quarried locally, were transported, shaped, and placed without mortar, relying on careful alignment and weight distribution to ensure stability. Terraces were carved into the hillside, sometimes supported by retaining walls that themselves demonstrate advanced understanding of load, balance, and soil stabilization. How did these communities organize labor, plan construction, and transmit architectural knowledge across generations? Were there master builders or spiritual leaders guiding the process, ensuring that both practical and symbolic dimensions were respected? The patterns of habitation and modification at Monte Baranta also hint at temporal depth. Archaeological layers suggest periods of expansion, consolidation, and reorganization, indicating that the site was in use for centuries and adapted to changing social, political, or environmental circumstances. Were these adaptations responses to external threats, internal social dynamics, or evolving ritual practices? And what stories of conflict, negotiation, or ceremony are embedded in the stone terraces and walls, waiting to be interpreted? Even today, standing atop Monte Baranta, one can feel the interplay of human ambition and natural forces. The wind sweeps across the plateau, carrying the scent of earth and sea, while the rugged landscape stretches in all directions, reminding visitors of both the isolation and strategic advantage of the site. The terraces, walls, and foundations speak of labor, planning, and imagination, yet they also conceal the intangible, the social hierarchies, spiritual beliefs, and daily routines that gave life to the settlement. What did the inhabitants of Monte Baranta see, believe, and fear? What ceremonies, knowledge, or symbolic practices remain hidden in the arrangement of stones, terraces, and vantage points? The enduring presence of Monte Baranta is both a testament to human ingenuity and an invitation to ponder the mysteries of the past. Its walls preserve centuries of construction, modification, and habitation, while the landscape around it continues to evoke the drama of human survival, ritual, and aspiration. Each terrace and defensive wall poses questions. What motivated the placement of each stone, the shaping of each pathway, and the design of each enclosure? How did the builders integrate practical needs with spiritual and symbolic meaning, and how much of that knowledge has been lost to time? Walking among the terraces, tracing the outlines of walls and structures, one senses the rhythm of life that once pulsed across Monte Baranta. The labor of stonework, the preparation of food, the observance of ritual, the strategies of defense, and the interactions of community. Yet for all the evidence of human activity, much remains inaccessible. What inspired these people to carve, shape, and organize stone on such a formidable summit? How did they perceive the connection between their settlement and the surrounding landscape, between the earthly and the spiritual? And what secrets, practices, or knowledge lie buried beneath layers of earth, stone, and centuries of weathering, awaiting discovery by those patient enough to listen to the whispers of history? Monte Baranta endures as a site of both comprehension and mystery, a place where human skill, spiritual imagination, and environmental awareness converge in stone. Its terraces and walls offer glimpses into prehistoric Sardinian life, yet they also challenge observers to grapple with the unknowable. The rituals performed, the beliefs held, the social dynamics navigated, and the knowledge transmitted across generations. As the sun dips over the surrounding hills, casting long shadows across the terraces, the mountain stands as a sentinel of memory, labor, and imagination, a monument to human creativity and endurance that continues to evoke curiosity, reflection, and wonder. From the sun-battered terraces of Monte Baranta, where the neurotic people of Sardinia shaped stone to endure wind, time, and ritual, our journey now crosses the western Mediterranean to the heart of La Mancha in central Spain. Here rises Motilla del Azuer, a prehistoric fortified settlement that, like the mountains and cliffs before it, commands attention through both its ingenuity and its mystery. From a distance, the site appears as a cluster of earthen mounds, rising subtly from the flat plains, yet the closer one approaches, the intricacy of human design becomes apparent. Circular towers, defensive walls, and subterranean structures hint at a community that balanced practical needs with sophisticated engineering, and perhaps deeper symbolic or ritual considerations. Motilla del Azuer belongs to the Bronze Age Motilla culture, flourishing around 2200 to 1500 BCE, in a region defined by scarce water and vast plains. Unlike hilltop settlements elsewhere in Europe, Motilla del Azuer occupies relatively flat terrain, yet its builders engineered defensive and functional systems that reflect remarkable ingenuity. The central tower, a circular stone and earth construction, is surrounded by concentric walls and auxiliary structures. Within, archaeologists have uncovered a water well, storage facilities, and evidence of controlled access, features that suggest a deliberate integration of defense, habitation, and resource management. How did these Bronze Age communities perceive risk, survival, and social cohesion in a landscape as unforgiving as the La Mancha Plains? The fortifications themselves are compelling. Thick walls rise from the earth, punctuated by gateways and bastions that guide movement while simultaneously imposing order and authority. Terraced enclosures and strategically placed towers indicate a nuanced understanding of human behavior. A visitor, trader, or intruder would be subtly directed along paths designed for control, visibility, and observation. Yet some features defy purely practical explanation. Certain internal enclosures appear oversized relative to immediate defensive need, and subterranean galleries beneath the central tower suggest purposes beyond mere storage. Were these hidden chambers intended for ritual, secrecy, or elite activities? And if so, what beliefs, hierarchies, or cultural practices informed their design? The presence of a deep, carefully constructed well at the heart of Motilla del Azuer adds another layer to its enigma. In a region where water is scarce, ensuring a reliable supply would have been vital for survival, but the construction is remarkable in its scale and precision. Stone-lined walls descend into the earth, forming a circular shaft that taps into subterranean aquifers. Could this engineering feat have been purely functional, or might it have carried symbolic significance as well, representing a connection between the community, the earth, and the unseen forces that sustain life? How did the people maintain and protect such a vital resource, and what role did it play in the social and ceremonial life of the settlement? Excavations at Motilla del Azuer have revealed traces of domestic activity, craft production, and trade, suggesting that this was not simply a military installation. Pottery fragments, tools, and ornaments indicate a vibrant daily life within the fortified complex, while spatial organization hints at social hierarchies, communal gatherings, and perhaps ceremonial observances. Certain enclosures may have been reserved for leaders, specialists, or ritual practitioners, while other areas accommodated ordinary inhabitants. How did the rhythms of labor, ritual, and defense interact in this Bronze Age community? And what knowledge, beliefs, or cosmological perspectives guided their decisions? The architectural sophistication of the site invites further speculation. Concentric walls, strategically placed towers, and subterranean galleries demonstrate advanced understanding of engineering, material properties, and human movement. Transporting and shaping large stones, constructing a secure well, and organizing the settlement required coordination, skill, and social organization. Who directed these projects? Were there specialized architects, ritual leaders, or community councils guiding the construction? And how was knowledge transmitted across generations to maintain such an enduring settlement? Motilla del Azuer also raises questions about the relationship between humans and environment. Its location, while defensible, was dictated in part by the need to access water and arable land. The builders adapted their architecture to seasonal floods, wind patterns, and the movement of herds and people across the plains. How did these environmental pressures shape not only the fortifications, but also daily life, ceremonial practices, and long-term planning? And to what extent did the site reflect a cultural worldview that integrated survival, ritual, and social organization into a coherent spatial and symbolic framework? Even the patterns of wear and modification hint at mysteries that remain unresolved. Certain walls were rebuilt, terraces reinforced, and subterranean chambers modified over time, indicating that the site evolved over centuries. Were these changes responses to external threats, climatic shifts, or cultural transformations? And what traces of intangible knowledge, ritual practice, leadership, community cohesion remain encoded in the stones and earthworks, silently awaiting interpretation? Walking among the mounds today, one feels the quiet presence of a community long vanished yet meticulously preserved in its architectural imprint. The terraces and walls speak of human ingenuity, foresight, and resilience, while the central well remains a powerful symbol of both practical and perhaps spiritual importance. The interplay of visibility, movement, and concealment at Motilla del Azuer reminds us that prehistoric communities engaged deeply with both tangible survival and intangible cultural expression. What ceremonies, rituals, or communal activities once animated these terraces and chambers? What beliefs guided the selection of the site, the layout of its walls, and the construction of its subterranean galleries? Motilla del Azuer stands as a monument to human adaptation, ingenuity, and mystery. Its earthen mounds and stone fortifications testify to the organization, skill, and foresight of Bronze Age communities, yet they also preserve unanswered questions. How did the inhabitants conceptualize the world around them? How did they integrate water, defense, habitation, and ritual into a coherent vision of life and survival? And what secrets of culture, belief, and social structure remain hidden beneath the mounds, silently waiting for the patient observer to uncover them? As the afternoon light casts long shadows over the undulating plains of La Mancha, the fortification's contours emerge in sharp relief, revealing terraces, walls, and pathways shaped by human hands millennia ago. Motilla del Azuer invites reflection on the ingenuity of its builders, the challenges they faced, and the knowledge they encoded in stone and earth. It is a place where practical engineering, ritual imagination, and human resilience converge, yet one where much remains unknowable, a silent sentinel of Bronze Age life that continues to challenge our understanding and inspire wonder. From the sun-baked plains of La Mancha, where the fortifications of Motilla del Azuer attest to the ingenuity of Bronze Age communities in managing scarce resources, our journey now turns to the arid deserts and fertile oases of the Arabian Peninsula. Here, in the United Arab Emirates, lies Hili Archaeological Park, a site where millennia-old human activity reveals the complexity, creativity, and resilience of societies in a landscape both harsh and alluring. At first glance, the park appears as a series of low-lying stone structures, burial mounds, and traces of settlements scattered across the desert sands. Yet, as one moves closer, the intricacy of human planning and the depth of cultural achievement become apparent, inviting both study and contemplation. Hili Archaeological Park is one of the most important sites associated with the Bronze Age An-Nar culture, flourishing approximately between 2600 and 2000 BCE. The site occupies a strategic location near oases in the Hajar Mountains, an area where water, fertile land, and trade routes converged. At the heart of Hili lies a complex of circular tombs, settlements, and ceremonial structures, all crafted from stone with remarkable precision. These circular tombs, some exceeding 9 meters in diameter, feature meticulously arranged stones forming concentric rings, passageways, and central burial chambers. The engineering skill required to construct such tombs in a desert environment speaks to the sophisticated social organization, technical knowledge, and cultural priorities of the Umunar people. How did these communities, with limited tools and resources, achieve such architectural complexity? And what social, ritual, or symbolic motivations guided the layout and construction of these tombs? The site's burial structures are particularly compelling. Each circular tomb is more than a repository for the dead. It is an architectural statement of permanence, status, and cosmological vision. Skeletal remains, along with grave goods such as pottery, beads, and metal objects, reveal a society that valued craftsmanship, trade, and ceremonial observance. Yet despite extensive study, many aspects remain enigmatic. Why were these tombs circular rather than rectangular, as seen in neighboring cultures? Were the concentric rings symbolic of celestial bodies, spiritual hierarchies, or social structures? And what rituals or ceremonies were performed here to honor the dead, seek protection, or ensure communal continuity? Beyond the tombs, Hili preserves evidence of settlements, irrigation systems, and agricultural practices, suggesting that its inhabitants were highly adapted to their environment. Stone foundations outline domestic and communal spaces, while ancient phallage channels indicate the presence of sophisticated water management techniques, vital in a region where rainfall is scarce and seasonal extremes are harsh. The ability to harness and distribute water implies not only technical knowledge, but also coordinated social effort. Who oversaw the maintenance of these systems, and how did communities balance survival, labor, and ritual obligations in such a challenging landscape? The fortifications and settlement structures at Hili hint at a society concerned with both security and hierarchy. Low walls and stone enclosures demarcate areas for domestic, ceremonial, or strategic purposes. While the threat of external attack is difficult to quantify, the architecture suggests planning for defense, surveillance, and control of movement. Could these measures reflect conflict with neighboring communities, competition over scarce resources, or ritualized displays of authority? And how did the inhabitants negotiate the tension between the need for security and the requirements of daily life, ceremony, and trade? Hili Archaeological Park is also remarkable for its evidence of trade and cultural exchange. Artifacts discovered at the site, including beads, pottery, and metals, point to long-distance interactions across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, connecting this desert society to distant communities along the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. How did such trade influence social structures, ritual practices, and technological innovation? Did imported materials inspire new forms of artistic expression or ceremonial practice? And what knowledge, beliefs, or stories traveled along these routes, shaping the identity and worldview of Hili's inhabitants? The desert landscape itself contributes to the site's enduring mystery. The placement of tombs, dwellings, and ceremonial structures suggests deliberate engagement with topography, sunlight, and the surrounding environment. Could certain tombs have been oriented toward celestial events, seasonal cycles, or topographical landmarks? Might the positioning of settlements reflect strategic visibility, environmental sustainability, or spiritual considerations? The integration of natural and built environments raises profound questions about how Bronze Age communities conceptualized space, ritual, and cosmology. Archaeological evidence also hints at ceremonial and ritual activities beyond funerary practice. Open spaces, stone alignments, and enigmatic structures suggest that Hili was not merely a residential site, but a center for social and spiritual life. Were public rituals performed to honor deities, the ancestors, or natural forces? Were some spaces reserved for elites, shamans, or specialized practitioners? And how did these practices reinforce social cohesion or hierarchical structures? The material record provides hints, but no definitive answers, leaving room for speculation and wonder. The technical expertise evident in Hili extends to construction techniques, water management, and spatial planning. Massive stones were quarried, shaped, and positioned with care. Walls and foundations were engineered to endure harsh weather, and irrigation channels were designed to maximize efficiency in an arid environment. How did communities organize labor, knowledge, and skill to achieve these feats? Was expertise centralized in a few individuals, or was it transmitted collectively across generations? And what ceremonial or symbolic imperatives guided the allocation of labor, time, and resources to both practical and ritual projects? Even as centuries have passed, the park maintains a profound aura. Excavations reveal layers of adaptation, modification, and reuse, suggesting that Hili evolved over generations in response to environmental, social, and political pressures. Yet many questions remain unanswered: the precise function of certain structures, the full extent of ritual activity, and the social dynamics of the community. How did inhabitants perceive their place in the broader region? What knowledge and practices were encoded in stone, soil, and water, and which have been lost to time? Walking through Hili today, the desert wind carries a sense of time suspended. Circular tombs rise from the sands, their concentric stones speaking of permanence, ritual, and human ambition. Foundations outline homes, workspaces, and communal areas where families, craftsmen, and leaders once labored, celebrated, and mourned. The juxtaposition of practical engineering, ritual architecture, and environmental adaptation invites reflection on the ingenuity and resilience of Bronze Age society. Yet the site also preserves the intangible, the fears, beliefs, and aspirations of those who lived and died here, largely hidden, silently shaping the human imprint on the landscape. Hili Archaeological Park endures as both monument and mystery. Its tombs, settlements, and water systems testify to human ingenuity, social organization, and spiritual imagination, yet they also leave profound questions unanswered. How did these communities negotiate the interplay of survival, ritual, and cultural identity? How did trade, cosmology, and landscape inform their decisions? And what intangible knowledge, ritual practices, social hierarchies, or spiritual insights remains buried beneath centuries of sand and stone, waiting for discovery? As the sun sets over the Hajar Mountains, casting long shadows across the desert, Hili stands as a testament to human resilience, adaptation, and imagination. Its circular tombs, carefully placed settlements, and ingenious water systems invite us to reflect not only on what is visible, but on what remains hidden. In every stone, every terrace, and every trace of human labor lies a story partially told and partially lost. A reminder that even in the most extreme environments, human creativity and mystery endure, waiting for the patient and curious to uncover them. From the sun-scorched sands and intricate tombs of Hili Archaeological Park, where Bronze Age communities balanced survival, ritual, and ingenuity in the Arabian desert, our journey shifts northward, thousands of kilometers to the windswept Isles of Orkney, Scotland. Here, atop the flat, exposed expanse of the mainland, lies the Henge of Brodgar, a prehistoric monument whose circular symmetry, massive stones, and precise alignment evoke both awe and deep mystery. Even today, the site conveys a sense of deliberate purpose, a convergence of human ambition, astronomical observation, and spiritual aspiration that continues to challenge our understanding of prehistoric life. The Henge of Brodgar is one of the most remarkable ceremonial complexes of the British Neolithic period. dating approximately to 2500 to 2000 BCE. Its circular stone arrangement, originally consisting of 60 standing stones, forms a vast ellipse measuring roughly 104 by 112 meters, surrounded by a deep ditch and an embankment, forming a monumental boundary that separates sacred space from the surrounding land. The scale and precision of this henge demonstrate an extraordinary mastery of engineering and collective organization, accomplished without written records or modern tools. How did Neolithic communities conceptualize such monumental constructions? What drove the collective effort required to transport, shape, and erect massive stones on this exposed and often unforgiving terrain? The stones themselves are imposing, many towering over 4 meters, carved from locally quarried sandstone yet meticulously positioned to achieve symmetry and alignment. Archaeologists have long debated the purpose of the henge. Was it primarily ceremonial, astronomical, or social? Some stones appear aligned with solar and lunar events, suggesting awareness of celestial cycles. Could the builders have used the henge as a calendar, marking solstices and equinoxes to organize agricultural, ritual, or social life? And if so, what knowledge and observational skill were required to achieve such alignment with naked-eye precision, passed down across generations? Surrounding the central circle is a deep ditch and embankment, forming a clear delineation between the inner sacred space and the outer landscape. This boundary evokes questions about ritual practice and social organization. Were these enclosures meant to contain ritual participants, to protect sacred spaces, or to signify separation between the mundane and the divine? What ceremonies were enacted within this elliptical ring of stones? Rites of passage, offerings, seasonal observances, or communal gatherings? And how did such ceremonies structure the social, political, and spiritual life of the Neolithic communities who erected them? The Henge of Brodgar exists within a broader sacred landscape, connected to nearby monuments including the stones of Stennis, Maeshowe chambered cairn, and various burial mounds, suggesting an integrated network of ritual and ceremonial sites. The spatial relationship between these sites may indicate a sophisticated understanding of geography, sightlines, and symbolic connections. Did the builders conceive of this landscape as a cosmogram, a map of spiritual or cosmic order embedded into the terrain? And what does this tell us about Neolithic concepts of community, spirituality, and the human relationship to the environment? Excavations within and around the henge reveal traces of human activity. Hearths, pottery fragments, and evidence of feasting suggest that the site functioned as more than a monument. It was a place of gathering, performance, and possibly long-distance interaction. How were these gatherings organized? Were they seasonal festivals, communal rites, or elite ceremonies? And how did participation reinforce social cohesion and authority? The combination of monumental architecture and ephemeral activity hints at a duality, a permanent symbolic imprint on the land alongside dynamic human engagement that leaves only traces for modern investigators to interpret. The technical expertise required for the henge is striking. Moving stones weighing several tons across uneven terrain, erecting them with balance and stability, and designing the enclosing ditch required careful planning, labor coordination, and a deep understanding of material properties. Who guided these efforts, and what systems of knowledge and leadership enabled such large-scale construction? Was expertise centralized in select individuals, or distributed among a community skilled in observation, engineering, and ritual practice? Despite extensive study, many aspects of the henge remain mysterious. Certain stone sockets appear to have held timber posts or smaller stones, suggesting layered or evolving construction over centuries. Were these modifications functional, symbolic, or ceremonial? Archaeologists debate whether the henge served as a temple, an astronomical observatory, a social gathering space, or all of these simultaneously. Could the purpose have changed over time, reflecting shifts in social hierarchy, belief systems, or environmental pressures? The environmental context further amplifies the Henge's mystique. Situated on a low-lying plateau, exposed to wind, rain, and seasonal extremes, the site demonstrates a sophisticated adaptation to place. The Henge's visibility across the surrounding landscape would have made it a landmark, both practical and symbolic. Could its location have been chosen to align with distant natural features, sightlines to other ceremonial sites, or celestial markers? And how did these environmental and cosmological considerations intertwine with social, ritual, and practical motivations? The human experience within the Henge is equally compelling. Walking among the stones, one can imagine the rhythm of life, the labor of transporting and erecting stones, the gathering of communities, the enactment of rituals, and the observation of celestial events. Yet the details remain elusive. The chants, gestures, and intentions of those who inhabited this ceremonial space are largely lost to time. What did they see when they looked outward across the plateau? How did the interplay of landscape, sky, and stone shape perception, belief, and social identity? Even after millennia, the Henge of Brodgar retains an almost magnetic presence. Its concentric arrangement, imposing monoliths, and alignment with the heavens continue to inspire questions about the intersection of human ingenuity, social organization, and spiritual aspiration. Each stone stands as a testament to the labor, planning, and imagination of its builders, yet also as a silent witness to the mysteries that remain unresolved. What guided the placement of each stone? How were social, spiritual, and practical considerations balanced in the monumental effort? And what knowledge, beliefs, or cosmologies were encoded in this landscape that have not survived in material form? The broader context of Orkney, with its dense concentration of Neolithic sites, suggests that Brodgar was part of a cultural network of extraordinary sophistication. Connections between monuments may have facilitated ceremonial interaction, information exchange, or collective ritual. Did the people of Brodgar envision their Henge as a focal point for a wider sacred landscape, linking human, natural, and cosmic domains? And how much of this network remains unrecognized or buried, waiting to be uncovered through careful observation, excavation, and interpretation? Standing in the center of the Henge of Brodgar today, the wind sweeping across the Orkney Plateau, one feels the convergence of human ambition, ingenuity, and mystery. The stones endure as silent witnesses, monumental in scale yet subtle in their implied knowledge. They challenge modern observers to reconcile the tangible evidence of engineering and planning with the intangible traces of ritual, social hierarchy, and belief. What ceremonies unfolded in their shadow? How did these people conceptualize the cosmos, their community, and their place in the world? And what secrets, long buried in stone and soil, await discovery by those who approach with patience, curiosity, and reverence? The Henge of Brodgar is, in every sense, a dialogue across time, a space where human skill, spiritual imagination, and environmental awareness converge, leaving enduring questions that continue to inspire wonder. Each stone, ditch, and embankment offers a glimpse into the mind of a Neolithic community that dared to shape the landscape, observe the heavens, and encode meaning into the earth. And yet, for all that is revealed, the Henge preserves the unknowable, reminding us that the most profound mysteries of human history are often those that endure quietly in plain sight, waiting for the careful observer to recognize their significance. From the windswept stones of Orkney, where the Henge of Brodgar stands as a testament to Neolithic ingenuity and spiritual vision, our journey turns once again to the Mediterranean, back to the rugged landscapes of Sardinia, Italy. Here, amidst rolling hills and limestone outcrops, we encounter one of the most enigmatic and awe-inspiring megalithic monuments of the Bronze Age, the Tombs of the Giants, or Tombe dei Giganti. At first glance, the site presents as a series of elongated stone chambers and massive monolithic slabs, partially hidden beneath the earth and overgrown vegetation. Yet even in ruin, the scale and precision of the constructions are immediately apparent. The very name, Tombs of the Giants, evokes both wonder and speculation, hinting at the enduring mystery of the people who created them. These tombs are a defining feature of the Nuragic civilization, which flourished in Sardinia from around 1800 BCE. Constructed from immense slabs of limestone, arranged in semicircular or elongated layouts, the monuments served as collective burial sites for entire communities. Some of the stones measure up to 4 meters in height and several tons in weight, carefully positioned to form chambers that could endure centuries of weathering. The effort required to quarry, transport, and erect these monoliths is staggering, raising questions about the social organization, engineering knowledge, and labor coordination of the Nuragic people. How did these Bronze Age communities manage to move and position such massive stones without modern tools? What techniques, tools, or communal strategies enabled them to achieve such precision in alignment and stability? The tombs themselves are both functional and symbolic. They typically consist of a central burial chamber, often covered by a mound of earth or smaller stones, and flanked by standing slabs forming a semicircular exedra. The exedra, sometimes stretching tens of meters, frames the tomb and gives it a monumental presence, transforming burial into performance, architecture into statement. Could these designs reflect a belief system in which the dead remained central to the life of the community, their resting places serving both as spiritual anchors and symbols of social cohesion? And how much of the planning was practical versus ceremonial? Were the tombs designed primarily to contain remains, or were they carefully orchestrated spaces for rituals, offerings, and ancestral veneration? Inside the chambers, archaeologists have discovered skeletal remains, pottery shards, obsidian tools, and other grave goods, offering glimpses into the lives, deaths, and beliefs of the Nuragic people. Yet many aspects remain unresolved. The arrangement of bones, the distribution of artifacts, and the orientation of the chambers suggest deliberate choice, but the reasons behind these choices remain unclear. Were certain tombs reserved for leaders, elders, or ritual specialists? Were the spaces used continuously, over generations, as collective repositories of community memory? And what did the selection of grave goods signify in terms of status, occupation, or spiritual significance? The architecture of the tombs raises further questions. The exedra, often composed of massive upright stones, gives the monuments a theatrical quality, as if the builders intended the tombs to be seen, approached, and experienced in a particular way. Were these exedras designed to align with celestial events, echoing patterns in the sky such as solstices or lunar cycles? Could the positioning of the tombs within the landscape, often on elevated ridges or near sacred springs, have carried symbolic or ritual significance, connecting the living community with ancestors, deities, or natural forces? The scale of labor invested in these monuments also speaks to the social complexity of the Nuragic culture. Coordinating quarrying, transport, erection, and alignment of multi-ton stones would have required not only physical skill, but also social structures capable of mobilizing and sustaining large groups of people over months, even years. Who organized this labor? Were there specialized leaders or master builders, or did knowledge reside collectively within the community? How did these communities balance labor for survival, subsistence, and monumental construction? And what ceremonial, spiritual, or social imperatives justified the immense expenditure of effort? Many of the tombs display evidence of modification and reuse over time, suggesting that the sites were dynamic, evolving centers of memory, ritual, and social practice. Stones were rearranged, chambers expanded and mounds reinforced, implying continuous engagement with the monuments across generations. What prompted these modifications? Were they responses to environmental pressures, population growth, social change, or shifts in belief systems? And how might these alterations have reflected evolving concepts of ancestry, power, or spiritual authority? The environmental context of the tombs is also significant. Sardinia's rugged terrain, interspersed with limestone ridges and fertile valleys, provided both challenges and opportunities for settlement. The placement of tombs often maximized visibility and prominence within the landscape, making them landmarks for the living community while maintaining connection to vital resources such as water, grazing lands, and trade routes. How did the Nuragic people integrate these environmental factors into their architectural and ceremonial choices? Were tombs intended to dominate the landscape visually, or to harmonize with natural forms, or perhaps both? Ritual practice likely played a central role in the function of these monuments. Openings in the chambers, alignments of stones, and evidence of offerings suggest that the tombs were active sites of ceremony, not merely repositories for the dead. Were these rituals seasonal, corresponding to agricultural or celestial cycles? Did they involve communal gatherings, feasting, or performance? And what role did the tombs play in sustaining social cohesion, transmitting cultural knowledge, and reinforcing hierarchies within the community? Archaeological interpretation also raises questions about the social and spiritual worldview of the builders. The careful selection and placement of stones, the orientation of chambers, and the integration of tombs within the broader landscape all imply a cosmology that connected human life, death, and the natural world. How did the Nuragic people conceive of time, ancestry, and spiritual presence? Did they see the tombs as thresholds between worlds, as sacred loci of power, or as enduring markers of community identity? And how much of this worldview can we recover from the surviving architecture, artifacts, and skeletal remains? Even today, walking among the tombs, one is struck by their scale, symmetry, and silent grandeur. The monoliths rise from the earth, weathered by millennia of sun, wind, and rain, yet retaining an aura of intentionality and presence. Each stone carries the imprint of human effort, imagination, and belief, yet conceals more than it reveals. How many hands labored to move, shape, and erect each slab? How many generations engaged with these spaces, each adding layers of meaning, memory, and ritual? And what secrets, social, spiritual, or technical, remain hidden within the stones themselves? The collective character of the tombs further enhances their mystery. Unlike individual burial sites, the tombs of the giants embody communal identity, linking multiple generations in shared space and practice. How did the physical arrangement of these collective tombs reflect social organization, kinship, or hierarchy? Were there distinctions between chambers for different family groups or social roles? And how did the interaction between individual and communal memory shape the design and use of these monuments? Moreover, the tomb's endurance raises profound questions about cultural intent. The Nuragic builders chose durable stone and deliberate forms, ensuring that the monuments would withstand the ravages of time. Did they anticipate that future generations, or even distant civilizations, might encounter these structures and wonder at their purpose? Was the act of construction itself a form of ritual, a deliberate creation of permanence to anchor human life in the shifting landscape of history? Even as archaeologists continue to study these tombs, many questions remain unresolved. The precise function of certain chambers, the significance of specific alignments, and the full scope of ritual practice are all matters of speculation. What remains clear, however, is that the tombs of the giants represent a remarkable intersection of human ingenuity, social organization, and spiritual aspiration. Each stone, chamber, and exedra offers both evidence and enigma, inviting contemplation of the people who built them, the beliefs that guided them, and the world they inhabited. Standing among these monumental tombs today, with sunlight casting long shadows across weathered stones and the wind whispering through the surrounding hills, one senses the enduring presence of those who came before. The tombs evoke both achievement and mystery, skill and imagination, life and death intertwined. How did the Nuragic people perceive their relationship to ancestors, community, and cosmos? What ceremonies, knowledge, or cosmologies are embedded in the stones, now silent but once resonant with human activity? And what secrets, buried in earth and memory, remain just beyond our reach, waiting for the patient observer to uncover the stories of a civilization that continues to challenge our understanding? The tombs of the giants endure as monuments to human creativity, resilience, and spiritual inquiry. They remind us that even in the most ancient and remote landscapes, human beings have sought permanence, connection, and meaning. From the sun-drenched hills and monumental tombs of Sardinia, where the tombs of the giants rise in silent testimony to Bronze Age ingenuity and communal ritual, our journey now takes us to the mist-laden plains of Ireland. Here, near the banks of the River Shannon, atop the ancient hill of Tara, lies the Mound of the Hostages, or Dún Aonghasa, a place steeped in legend, ceremonial significance, and enduring mystery. At first glance, the mound appears as a simple earthen rise, its grassy slopes gentle against the skyline. Yet beneath this seemingly modest exterior lies a complex story of human ambition, ritual practice, and ancestral memory, stretching back over 5,000 years. The Mound of the Hostages is one of the oldest and most enigmatic Neolithic monuments in Ireland, dating approximately to 3000 to 2500 BCE. Archaeological investigations reveal that it was originally constructed as a passage tomb, with a central burial chamber formed from large limestone slabs covered by earth to create a distinctive earthen mound. Excavations have uncovered skeletal remains, pottery fragments, and symbolic objects, hinting at a society deeply concerned with life, death, and the maintenance of communal identity. The name itself, Mound of the Hostages, evokes a darker, historical narrative layered atop prehistoric function, referencing a later tradition in which young captives were held here as political leverage. This duality of meaning, ancient ritual site and historic power center, adds layers of intrigue, suggesting that the mound retained significance across millennia. What is immediately striking about the Mound of the Hostages is its subtle integration into the landscape. The earthen rise occupies a commanding position overlooking the surrounding plain, yet it is intimately connected to the horizon, aligning with key points such as hills, rivers, and other ceremonial sites within the Tara complex. Did its builders deliberately select this location to harness both practical and symbolic significance, visibility, prominence, and cosmological resonance? How did they perceive their place within the landscape, and how did this understanding influence the design and orientation of the tomb? Inside the mound, the central chamber and passageway were constructed with precision, creating a confined, deliberate space that both protects and conceals. Skeletal remains discovered within indicate collective burial, perhaps for elite members of the community or individuals of ritual importance. The arrangement of these remains, alongside associated artifacts such as stone tools and pottery, implies careful ceremonial practice. Were these tombs intended solely to house the dead, or did the passage and chamber serve as stages for ritual performance, ancestral veneration, or seasonal observances? What stories, beliefs, or cosmologies guided the construction of these subterranean chambers, and how were these practices transmitted across generations? The alignment of the mound itself raises further questions. Some researchers suggest that the passage may have been intentionally oriented to interact with the sun, marking solstices or equinoxes, while others point to potential lunar or stellar alignments. Could this monument have functioned as a calendar, helping communities anticipate agricultural cycles or ceremonial events? And if so, what observational knowledge, communal coordination, and symbolic understanding were required to encode such precision into earth and stone without written records? Beyond the central tomb, the Mound of the Hostages exists within a broader ceremonial landscape. Surrounding features at Tara include enclosures, ritual avenues, standing stones, and later Iron Age monuments. This concentration of ritual and political activity suggests a deliberate network, where the mound served not in isolation, but as part of a system of sacred spaces. How were these sites interconnected, both physically and symbolically? Did the Neolithic builders envision a cosmogram linking earth, sky, and community, or were these relationships emergent over centuries of use and adaptation? The construction itself is an extraordinary feat of human ingenuity, transporting massive limestone slabs, positioning them to create stable chambers, and covering them with layers of earth required careful planning, technical skill, and social coordination. Who directed these efforts? Were there master builders, ritual specialists, or leaders who orchestrated the labor, knowledge, and resources necessary to create such enduring monuments? And how did these communities organize and sustain labor in an era of limited tools and technology? The ceremonial function of the mound likely extended beyond the treatment of the dead. Evidence from other passage tombs suggests that these sites were spaces of performance, reflection, and collective ritual. Offerings of food, pottery, and symbolic objects indicate that living participants engaged actively with the dead, invoking ancestral presence and guidance. Did these rituals coincide with astronomical events, agricultural cycles, or social milestones? How did participation in ceremonies reinforce social cohesion, leadership structures, or spiritual authority? And what narratives, mythic, symbolic, or historical, were enacted within and around the mound? The name Mound of the Hostages also invites reflection on the layering of meaning over time. Centuries after its initial construction, the site was associated with political rituals, including the taking of hostages by chieftains and kings. This continuity of sacred significance, transforming from Neolithic tomb to historic power center, raises profound questions about cultural memory and the endurance of symbolic landscapes. How did successive generations reinterpret the site, integrating new practices while respecting or reshaping its ancient functions? And to what extent did the original cosmological and ritual intentions survive within later traditions? Even environmental factors contribute to the mound's mystique. Situated on an elevated ridge, it is exposed to winds and weather, yet remains remarkably preserved. How did ancient builders understand and manipulate these environmental conditions, drainage, stability, and erosion, to ensure the monument's durability over millennia? And how might the interaction between natural forces and human intervention have influenced the spatial, ritual, or symbolic dimensions of the mound? Walking across the Tara complex today, one senses the layering of time, the careful rise of the Mound of the Hostages, the surrounding ceremonial enclosures, and the distant hills, all woven into a complex web of human intention, environmental adaptation, and ritual observance. Each stone, each contour of earth, carries the imprint of hands long vanished, yet remains remarkably legible in its scale, proportion, and subtle alignment. How much of the knowledge, belief, and social organization of the Neolithic builders can we reconstruct from these traces? what remains forever beyond our comprehension, hidden in the intentions and perceptions of people whose world was at once intimate, symbolic, and cosmically oriented. The mound's interior chambers continue to provoke questions about Neolithic concepts of death, ancestry, and social structure. Did the builders view death as a transition, a journey, or a cyclical process linked to celestial and seasonal rhythms? Were the interred considered intermediaries between living and divine forces, guiding the community through both practical and spiritual life? And how did these beliefs shape the very architecture of the tomb, its passage, chamber, and relationship to the horizon? Archaeological research has uncovered modifications and reuse over centuries, demonstrating that the Mound of the Hostages was far from static. Layers of earth, repositioned stones, and evidence of renewed ritual activity suggest that this was a dynamic, evolving space, constantly reinterpreted by successive generations. What prompted these adaptations? Environmental necessity, social change, or ritual innovation? And how did these modifications maintain continuity with the mound's original purpose while accommodating new cultural realities? Even today, standing atop the mound, one feels the silent weight of centuries, the presence of those who labored, lived, and died, the echoes of ceremonies long extinguished, and the enduring mystery of human intention encoded in stone and earth. The Mound of the Hostages is at once monument and question, a place where the practical, the ceremonial, and the symbolic converge. What truths lie buried beneath the layers of earth, stone, and memory? What aspects of Neolithic life, belief, and social structure remain inaccessible, hidden in ways that only the imagination, observation, and careful study can approach? The Mound of the Hostages endures as a testament to human creativity, resilience, and imagination. It reminds us that even the simplest seeming landscape can hold profound mysteries, waiting for patient eyes and curious minds to uncover the story of those who came before. Every stone, every contour, and every chamber is a dialogue across millennia, a bridge between the lives of Bronze Age people and the questions of our present. And yet, for all we can observe and analyze, much remains unknowable, a silent invitation to wonder, reflect, and continue seeking understanding in the ancient past. From the mist-shrouded plains of Tara, where the Mound of the Hostages rises as a silent witness to millennia of human ritual, our journey now takes us eastward to the gentle, undulating countryside of North Yorkshire, England. Here lies one of the most enigmatic and least understood ceremonial landscapes of Neolithic Britain, the Thornborough Henges. Spread across several kilometers, this complex of three large, circular earthworks, commonly known as the North, Central, and South Henges, offers an extraordinary glimpse into the ceremonial sophistication of communities living over 5,000 years ago. Unlike the solitary monuments of other regions, Thornborough presents a coordinated arrangement, a landscape deliberately designed to engage the sky, the earth, and the people who walked within it. At first glance, the henges appear as low, circular banks and deep ditches, subtle against the modern agricultural fields that surround them. Yet careful observation reveals that the scale is monumental, diameters of up to 240 meters, enormous ditches of precise depth, and banked enclosures that required the organized labor of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. Such labor implies a social complexity that challenges conventional assumptions about Neolithic life. How did these communities plan and execute such ambitious constructions without formal engineering knowledge or written records? What collective vision could coordinate both human and material resources to such precise effect? The three henges are not randomly placed. They form an alignment, often referred to as a ritual axis, with the north and central henges separated by approximately 1.3 kilometers, while the south henge completes a line stretching across the landscape. This linear arrangement suggests deliberate design, possibly intended for processional movement, ceremonial enactment, or symbolic alignment with celestial or terrestrial markers. Could this axis have represented a spiritual journey or a cosmic map, linking sky and earth in a visible manifestation of Neolithic cosmology? How closely did these alignments correspond to sunrise, sunset, lunar cycles, or other celestial phenomena? And what knowledge and observational skill were necessary to achieve this precision? Excavations within the Henges reveal traces of human activity: pits, post holes, pottery fragments, and evidence of feasting. These findings suggest that Thornborough was more than a static monument. It was a dynamic space for community interaction, ritual, and performance. Were these henges used seasonally to mark solstices, equinoxes, or agricultural cycles? Did participants engage in processions, dances, or offerings to ancestors or deities? And how did the act of ritual reinforce social cohesion, leadership, and identity among these Neolithic communities? The construction of the henges involved sophisticated understanding of materials and landscape. The ditches were dug with remarkable precision, and the earth was used to form symmetrical banks. Some evidence suggests that timber posts once stood within the henges, forming circles or avenues that would have dramatically altered the visual and spatial experience of the sites. Were these posts symbolic, marking ritual spaces or astronomical alignments? Or did they serve a practical function, perhaps as markers for ceremonial movement or orientation? And how did the builders balance functionality, symbolism, and aesthetic impact in creating a space that could inspire awe and focus attention on the sacred? Thornborough exists not in isolation, but within a broader ceremonial and social landscape. Nearby burial mounds, cursus monuments, and other earthworks hint at a network of sites connected through ritual, memory, and geography. How did the Thornborough Henges interact with these other monuments, and what patterns of movement, visibility, and symbolism can we discern? Did Neolithic people perceive the landscape as a sacred grid, a living canvas in which human activity, natural features, and celestial events were intricately interwoven? And how might the experience of walking through this landscape have shaped perception, belief, and social identity? Despite extensive study, many mysteries remain. The precise function of the henges is still debated. Were they ceremonial centers, astronomical observatories, social gathering spaces, or all of these at once? Could they have served multiple purposes depending on time, season, or community needs? The lack of written records leaves interpretation open to informed conjecture. Yet the scale, symmetry, and alignment of the monuments suggest intentionality that transcends mere practicality. What motivated these communities to invest so much effort in structures that, by their nature, required labor, organization, and planning far beyond subsistence needs? The interaction between people and environment adds another layer of intrigue. Thornborough's placement on low, fertile land near the River Ure provides both accessibility and visibility, yet also exposes the monuments to flooding, wind, and erosion. How did Neolithic builders manage these environmental challenges? Were the locations selected for ritual and symbolic prominence as much as for practical accessibility? And how did natural features such as rivers, hills, or the movement of the sun and moon inform the design, orientation, and experience of the henges? Walking along the banks and peering into the deep ditches today, one senses the careful orchestration of space and movement. The subtle gradients, the continuity of the banks, and the precise curves of the henges reflect a remarkable understanding of geometry and proportion. How did Neolithic communities transmit this knowledge? Were there specialists, ritual leaders, architects, or engineers guiding the work, or was expertise embedded collectively within the society? And what role did observation, experimentation, and iteration play in achieving such enduring precision? The ceremonial dimension of Thornborough is equally compelling. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Henges were spaces of human interaction, where social, spiritual, and practical life converged. Offerings, food remains, and carefully placed artifacts hint at complex ritual behavior, while the alignment and arrangement of the Henges may have framed processions, gatherings, or seasonal observances. Were participants meant to move through the Henges in specific sequences, experiencing transitions from mundane to sacred, from earth to sky? And how did these ceremonies shape collective memory, identity, and the perception of time and space within the community? Over centuries, the Henges would have witnessed generations of human activity, each layer of use adding to their significance. Did later communities reinterpret, adapt, or preserve these monuments according to evolving belief systems? How much of their original purpose was understood, and how much transformed over time as cultural and social contexts shifted? The endurance of Thornborough, both physically and symbolically, speaks to a continuity of sacred significance that bridges millennia. Even today, standing within the subtle curves of the Henges, one senses the weight of human intention and communal effort. The banks and ditches whisper of labor, observation, and imagination, while the alignment across the landscape invites contemplation of cosmology, ritual, and social organization. How did the Neolithic builders perceive their relationship to the cosmos, to their ancestors, and to one another? What knowledge, belief, or ritual practice is encoded in these monuments that remains hidden from modern observation? The Thornborough Henges endure as a dialogue between human ambition, social coordination, and spiritual imagination. Each bank, ditch, and possible post hole speaks of labor, planning, and vision, while simultaneously concealing intentions, ceremonies, and meanings that remain beyond full comprehension. They are monuments to both what we can know, the engineering, alignment, and material presence, and to what remains unknowable, the lived experience, symbolic reasoning, and spiritual world of communities long vanished from the landscape. As the sun casts long shadows across the earthworks, and the wind moves through the grassy banks, the Thornborough Henges invite reflection on continuity and mystery. They remind us that landscapes are not merely physical, but also cultural and spiritual, shaped by generations seeking to anchor their lives, beliefs, and memories in stone, earth, and observation. What did these spaces mean to the people who built and used them? How did they experience the intersection of ritual, landscape, and cosmos? And what secrets, layered over centuries of human interaction, remain buried beneath the grass, waiting for careful eyes and patient study to reveal the stories of Neolithic Britain? Even after thousands of years, the Thornborough Henges still inspire awe and questions. They make us reflect not only on the technical skills of prehistoric people, but also on their beliefs and social organization. The key mystery remains how the builders balanced practical work, ritual, and spiritual vision, and what future discoveries might reveal about this remarkable ceremonial site. From the grassy banks and celestial alignments of North Yorkshire, where the Thornborough Henges silently evoke Neolithic ritual, our journey now shifts southward, across the Mediterranean Sea, to the sun-baked islands of Malta. Here, amidst limestone cliffs and gently rolling plains, stand some of the most extraordinary prehistoric monuments in Europe, the megalithic temples of Malta. These structures, some dating back as far as 3,600 BCE, predate the Egyptian pyramids and the earliest stone circles of Britain, yet they exhibit a level of architectural sophistication and ceremonial precision that continues to puzzle archaeologists and historians alike. The temples are immediately striking, not only for their sheer age but for their monumental form and careful construction. Massive limestone blocks, some weighing several tons, are arranged into curving walls, intricately shaped chambers and open courtyards. The stones themselves are carved with abstract motifs, spirals, and patterns whose meanings remain obscure. Walking among these formations today, one senses the deliberate intent behind each placement, the careful selection of stone, the precise alignment of walls, and the integration of space to create an environment that is both functional and symbolic. How did communities of farmers and artisans, without metal tools or written language, quarry, transport, and position these megaliths with such precision? And what inspired their designs, which echo both practical architecture and spiritual expression? Malta's temples, such as Hagar-Chim, Menasdra, Tarxian, and Gantia, share a distinctive architectural pattern. Semicircular apses radiate from central corridors, forming complex interiors that could host communal rituals, offerings, or performances. The spatial organization appears intentional, guiding movement through the temple and focusing attention on particular points or altars. Could these apses have represented cosmological concepts, such as the cycles of the sun, moon, or stars? Did the builders encode astronomical knowledge into the very layout of these structures, creating spaces where ritual and observation intertwined? Excavations within the temples have uncovered altars, carved stone statues, and fragments of pottery, shells, and animal bones. These finds suggest that the sites functioned as centers for ritual activity and possibly as places of healing, fertility, or ancestor veneration. Yet the interpretation of these objects remains elusive. Were they offerings to deities, tokens of gratitude, or symbolic gestures meant to ensure communal prosperity? And what cosmologies, beliefs, or social structures motivated the placement and use of such artifacts? One of the most intriguing features of the Maltese temples is their alignment with celestial phenomena. Menasdra, for example, is oriented to the solstices, with the rising sun illuminating specific chambers during the winter and summer solstices. This suggests not only observational skill, but also a sophisticated understanding of seasonal cycles, essential for agricultural planning and ritual timing. How were these alignments determined, and what methods enabled the builders to achieve such accuracy without advanced instruments? Could the temples have functioned simultaneously as ceremonial spaces, astronomical observatories, and communal calendars? The scale of the constructions raises further questions about social organization. Erecting massive stones, carving intricate designs, and coordinating labor-intensive construction would have required leadership, technical knowledge, and collective effort. Who directed these projects? Were there ritual specialists, master builders, or councils that orchestrated work across generations? And how did communities motivate and sustain large-scale efforts, balancing labor for survival with monumental ceremonial construction? Beyond the architecture and alignment, the temples themselves are imbued with mystery through their repeated motifs and artistic expression. Carved spirals, abstract shapes, and depictions of animals evoke a symbolic language that remains undeciphered. Were these designs purely decorative, or did they encode information, ritual instructions, or cosmological principles? Did the patterns communicate meaning to initiates, mark sacred spaces, or serve as visual prayers and invocations? And how did the symbolism influence the movement and experience of those who entered the temples? The temple's placement within the landscape is equally remarkable. Elevated on limestone outcrops, overlooking plains and valleys, they command both visibility and prominence, integrating natural topography into their ceremonial function. Were these locations chosen for practical reasons, such as proximity to water or fertile land, or primarily for spiritual significance? How did the builders perceive the relationship between earth, sky, and human activity? And how did this perception inform the orientation, design, and ritual use of the temples? Archaeological evidence indicates that the temples were in use for centuries, with successive generations adapting, modifying, and expanding the structures. Layers of stone, new carvings, and evidence of ritual continuity suggest that these sites were dynamic, living spaces rather than static monuments. What drove these adaptations? Were they responses to changes in society, environment, or religious belief? And how did communities maintain continuity with the original sacred purpose while accommodating evolving practices and cosmologies? The megaliths themselves pose technical enigmas. Some stones weigh more than 20 tons and were transported across uneven terrain without metal tools or draft animals. How did the builders manage this logistical challenge? Were they using sledges, ropes, rollers, or techniques now lost to history? And what does the technical sophistication required for these projects reveal about the ingenuity, planning, and collective knowledge of prehistoric Maltese society? Despite centuries of research, many aspects of the temples remain unexplained. The precise function of particular chambers, the meaning of artistic motifs, and the full scope of ritual practice are still subjects of debate. Were the temples primarily centers of fertility, ancestor worship, celestial observation, or social governance, or did they serve multiple roles simultaneously? And how much of their purpose has been obscured by time, leaving us to interpret physical evidence without the context of spoken language or written records? Visiting the temples today, one is struck by their monumental presence and subtle complexity. Sunlight illuminates carved motifs, shadows trace the contours of apses, and the air is heavy with a sense of both human achievement and profound mystery. The structures convey intentionality, creativity, and spiritual awareness, yet they also retain secrets, questions about belief, ritual, and social structure that may never be fully answered. What did it feel like to enter these spaces thousands of years ago, to participate in rituals, witness astronomical alignments, or interact with sacred objects? And what knowledge, spiritual insight, or symbolic understanding guided the actions of builders and worshippers alike? The megalithic temples of Malta endure as remarkable testimonies to human creativity, ingenuity, and spiritual inquiry. Each stone, carving, and chamber embodies the skill, effort, and belief of the people who built them, while simultaneously preserving a silent enigma. How did prehistoric Maltese communities conceptualize the cosmos, the cycles of life and death, and the sacred connection between humans and the divine? What does the enduring presence of these monuments tell us about the power of collective vision, ritual, and memory? And what aspects of this ancient civilization remain hidden, waiting for future discovery or interpretation? As the Mediterranean sun casts long shadows across the limestone temples, we are left with a profound sense of connection and wonder. These structures are more than relics. They are expressions of human curiosity, ingenuity, and the desire to transcend the ordinary. And while much has been uncovered through archaeology, countless questions remain about the rituals performed within these walls, the cosmological knowledge encoded in their design, and the lives of those who built and revered them. The megalithic temples of Malta continue to challenge our understanding, inviting reflection on the mystery, complexity, and enduring power of human creativity in the ancient world.